Here.
Counselor M. Teresa Santos.
Here.
Counselor Dennis B. Toronto.
Here.
Counselor Barbara A. Von Villis.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mr.
Thank you.
President.
Please join us in the pledge of allegiance to our flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, good evening. Pursuant to provisions of Article 2, Section 203 of the Town Charter, and in accordance with Section 42462, 42464, 42465, and 42466 Rhode Island General Laws, I hereby call a special meeting of the Town Council to formally consider, discuss, and act upon the following items of business. All items on this agenda may be considered, discussed, and voted upon. First item, continued from special meeting, July 13th, 2020. Review of the town proposed budgets, capital improvement plan, general fund, parks and recreation fund, sewer fund, refuse and recycling fund for fiscal year 2020 through 2021, and matters related thereto.
Motion to review the town of Middletown proposed budgets and capital improvement plan, general fund, parks and recreation fund, sewer fund, and refuse and recycling fund for the fiscal year 2020 to 2021, and matters related thereto.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
The presentation, Nate. We left off on page 11 of the presentation, which is the town clerk's department. Total expenditures are $509,000. It's an increase of $11,000 or 2% over the prior year. We've proposed 4.5 FTEs, which is the current staffing of the office. The compensation, health, and pension numbers you've seen before. There are no capital purchases proposed for the clerk's office. Highlights for the upcoming budget year is presently we have 2 elections that we need to address, September and November. And I guess something that, Mr. President, we've been talking about is trying to address some of the issues with the courts. One is that the probate court has been busier in the past years than it has. It has gotten to be more intense. The municipal court has become less intense. So what we've initially put together to start the discussion is a proposal to look at the stipend that's paid to the court judges and to set those at $1,200 a month, different from what their current stipends are. The biggest challenge that the department has right now in the COVID environment is finding election workers, as well as some additional workers in case someone falls out. Implementing the changes that are occurring rapidly with the Secretary of State, and then also dealing with issues related to mail and emergency ballots. So with that, I'll turn it over to Wendy to talk about her department.
I don't know, you summed it up basically. It's been very busy for elections, and it'll get busier. Our land evidence, actually, I looked at it today, we're almost 500 more instruments than we did last year at this time. So even with COVID, the office is very busy. My budget right now, the only thing that's gone up in the budget is the advertising and the printing and the document copying.
But you have no control of that.
I have no control over any of that. It's all state mandate. And the increase, if you looked under the operating, it's only $1,000.
Councilor Santos.
Pass. No questions.
Councilor Von Villis.
No questions.
Councilor Flynn.
Just one question. So the increase in expenditures, that's mostly the elections.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Toronto.
I was just going to add a couple years ago, we changed the budgeting. So we do set aside some of the election expenses and accrue it essentially year to year so that we have we don't have a large bump in expenses every 4 years. So there is an accrual that's coming in through a transfer of funds back in to offset the cost. So it's not a spike on something against the tax rate.
Counselor Toronto?
Thank you. I was just kind of curious about the mail-in ballots. Have we, for the election that's coming up?
We receive about between 20 and 30 mail-in ballots each day, and it increases as it gets closer.
Okay.
And then we'll have the emergency voting where they come in and they will vote that day. So that's a lot of other paperwork too.
Yeah, so thank you for all your effort and your team's effort of working your way through this fluid situation we're in. So thank you.
Counselor Lombardi?
So, Wendy, just a little news flash. Just before I got here, I received a phone call that the House of Representatives voted to send out mail ballot applications for the primary and for the November election. I'm anticipating that it's probably going to have to get passage in the Senate, but the House just overwhelmingly voted to do that, which is going to increase your workload.
Yes, that is definitely going to.
I don't know if it's got legs in the Senate, but I just heard that just before I got here tonight. It was like only 11 votes against in the House. So that's going to be a significant challenge to you all if that happens, because 80%, I believe, statewide, they said was it was about the average for people over the age of 90, and it decreased to the age of 70 to like 70%, and then 60 was about 70% also. People who voted in the presidential preference primary. So people are afraid to go to the polls, and I think we're going to see a lot of people voting by mail ballot.
Well, thank you for the information. And
Well-
it was very busy with the presidential preference
Yeah,
mail ballots.
I don't know if it's got legs in the Senate, but that definitely went pretty overwhelmingly on the House today is what I was told. And, you know, after sitting here for 6 years and watching the volume of work that goes on in your office, not just during the election year, I mean, this office takes care of everything from the cradle to the grave. Birth certificates, death certificates, they oversee the cemetery maintenance. I mean, everything that comes through this town hall in one way or another, you know, somehow ends up at your front desk, you know, and I just think that I'm looking at the FTEs, and it's 4.5. And I know I've had this discussion with a couple of my colleagues, and I know that I've had the discussion with Sean, and I don't understand why we can't bring that part-time employee up to a full-time person. I think that's a body that could be well-used and time well-used. And I just think we should do that. I think it's something that we should give serious consideration to as we look at the clerk's budget. I mean, boards and committees, canvassing elections, cemetery maintenance, keeper of town permanent records and other duties, land evidence, licensing, municipal court, probation services, town council, which might be the most challenging part of your job, and vital records. I mean, you know, 4 people. And we're asking for another half a body. I'm going to ask my colleagues to seriously consider this. I think it's important, that they're important, vital service of this town. So, that's it.
Vice President?
Thank you, Bob. So under probate services, what are other charges? What is that?
That's the stipend paid to the probate judge.
Okay, so so it's going up $6,000. Is that what's proposed for an increase for the probate judge?
What I've proposed is that we pay the probate judge and municipal judge a similar stipend. They spend the same amount of time here at Town Hall administering the court. and that amount be $1,200 a month for each judge.
So if you go into municipal court other charges, I'm assuming it's going to went down $11,000. Why is that?
Because I proposed that we also pay the municipal court judge the $1,200 stipend. Basically, each judge gets paid the same amount to run the court. The municipal court judge historically had been paid a greater amount of money because up until a few years ago, the court was very active. It's no longer that active, but we continue to compensate the judge as if it is. So I'm proposing that we create a parity between the two positions and pay them for the amount of time, or try to create, some measure, pay them for some measure of time that they're actually here at town hall conducting court.
What's with the inactivity?
Well, right now it's COVID. That's the major activity.
Well, you said over the last few years, so I get that it's probably closed, but I remember we used to have to shuttle people from
Correct.
the shopping center over here because it was so busy, or go 2 days a week, or every other Tuesday, or every Tuesday until it was so busy. Are we losing money?
The court loses money, yes.
Since when?
Probably the last 3 years. I've looked at it with the clerk's office. We can pull those records out again, but it has been losing money.
How much have we lost, do you know?
Not offhand, I can provide that.
If you could, that'd be great.
Yep.
Because when that court was implemented, municipal court, it was implemented based on it would self-fund it. It would self-fund and be sustainable. So I'd like to know how much we've lost. Is with what you're doing there, is that part of why you're doing it, or
Yes, it's reducing the expenses.
will it at this reduced expense, will it self-fund?
I don't believe so.
Oh,
So-
okay.
But we can run that based on the fiscal year that just ended.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I'm going to follow up on what the vice president said in regards to the courts. We enjoyed the luxury of generating revenue for years out of municipal court. Frankly, I don't know what the issue is, even though there's been some scuttlebutt about what the issue is. But I think it's time for everybody to sit down at the table again, and I know this has happened before, but I don't believe that COVID would totally affect us like this. I mean, people are getting cited, people are getting citations. The traffic courts in Providence are still active. District courts and criminal courts are active. But apparently our municipal court is not active. I know our probate court's active. Is that a fair assessment, Madam Clerk? You sit in on both of them?
Yes, it is. The probate court is very active. The municipal court is.
I mean, there's no sense to me to even have a court if we're going to lose money, frankly. And we always had a luxury of making money in municipal court. And not saying that that's why we have the court, but certainly is a reason why we should continue to have it. I remember when our solicitor, current solicitor Peter Regan, was our municipal court judge. We used to get our mileage out of him. And as the vice president alluded to, so much mileage, we had to designate a no parking space for a judge in the parking lot here. And that's why we put the sign up, judge parking, because when the judge got here, there'd be no parking for the judge. So I think this is something we really have to look into. Councilor Santos.
No question.
Councilor Von Villas? Councilor Flynn?
Just a request. Thank you, Mr. President. So when, you're having a budget with a 60% swing and a 40% swing, and Counselor Lombardi, your request, which I have no problem, if your department needs it, considering that. But data points would be very helpful for us and for the public to see, to justify what we're trying to do here. So it just, the data points on the courts and the data points on the work, or are we paying overtime because we need another person? Is something not getting done? So I would just request, you give me that, we'll get what you need. That's our job. Thank you.
Council Toronto. Lombardi?
Yeah, so, the municipal court issue is a sore subject with me. With the drop and it's not about revenue. It's about sustainability, and it's about the court sustaining itself. And it's done that for all these years up until just recently. And to even consider the remote possibility of not having the municipal court is one fact that sticks in my mind. If we do that, and you just talk about sending people here for traffic violations, if we don't have the municipal court, we have to send our residents to Cranston for a good number of these cases that will go normally in front of a municipal court judge. It's an inconvenience to our residents. It's one of the upsides of having a municipal court, is that we don't have to send our residents all the way to Cranston, let alone, the local attorneys that would have to drive to Cranston to go up to represent clients in municipal court. I think I want some data. Terry just said it. I want some data. And I want to have, like Bob said, I think we need to get some people to the table and see how we fix this issue, because it's upsetting to me.
Vice President?
Just for the record, Mr. Lombardi, I would never vote to disband the municipal court.
I know, but I mean.
So I think you're taking that a little too extreme. I know Bob's mentioned that, but I just,
No, I didn't mention to do it. I wasn't suggesting it. I'm
no, you
just saying
mentioned that why should we have that if we're not going to make
Well,
money?
that was
So I
just-
think that's where he's going with it.
There was a point of reference, just a
So-
monetary reference.
I understand. So, but I get what you're saying. So Wendy, you said that I wouldn't support going full-time. I think we need to just kind of wait, because as we consolidate with the school, with finance, there could be people that maybe that could fill that position. I don't know if that's the case. Who knows? I'd like to, yeah, there's no doubt you're busy. But that's the idea, to come to work to be busy. It's not to come to work and hang around. I'm not saying that's what you do. I'm just trying to make a reference that we come to work to be busy. But you said you were busy. Is it online stuff that you're busy? Because town hall's closed. So
No,
is it,
busy. We have people come here. They come to the door. We go to the door. We take the recordings. We bring them in, we record. We bring it back out to them. Or they drop it in the Dropbox and we record. We have people that come in for marriage licenses. We have people that drop off their dog licenses. We have constant flow. We're constantly at the door.
and that stuff can't be done online?
Not all of it. You can't do a marriage license online. You can't do your, we're working on getting e-recording, but not everybody's going to be able to use e-recording. We just implemented the licenses online, and so that's just starting. Before that, they'd come in, we'd give it to them at the door, they take it, and they drop it in the Dropbox, or they'd come back and we'd meet them at the door. But they'll never be able to do a marriage license online.
Okay. Well, Sean, when do we plan on opening the doors?
I think what we're looking at right now is the current data and what's happening in Middletown. And we're evaluating. There is no immediate plan to do it.
I'm not being wise, but I kind of feel like, it makes me feel like town hall's special, because every place in the world's open.
The guidance.
Our
from the-
businesses are open every day, and
I understand that. And I've shared the data with you, the guidance from the Department of Health. And right now, the guidance that's coming out is that the building, like an office building, basically employees should work from home if we're able to provide a remote work environment. and to restrict the activity where we're able to do that. And since, the state of emergency was announced by the governor, we've been open every day. We provide services, full services every day. So I don't necessarily agree that we open just because you can open the doors. I think we open because it's safe for the public and it's safe for the employees. And again, it's consistent with guidance that's coming from the state. I don't think it's treating anybody special. It's pretty consistent with businesses that, a retail business might be open, but offices aren't open in the corporate park necessarily. A lot of people where they're able to are working remotely.
Okay, well, I just don't see it that way. I think there's certain guidelines that a lot of businesses are following, but, that's maybe out in the,
Again, I
on
can
the-
share
out in
those
the business
guidelines with
world, you know?
again. I mean, they're pretty specific from the Department of Health, so
yeah.
I'll share those.
Well,
with
who has the power to open the door? You?
We all have a responsibility to follow guidance from the state. That's the way I would answer that. And I think they're pretty clear. I guess if you're asking me to do something that's contrary to what the Department of Health is doing, we should talk about that. Because we try to make decisions here and throughout the town that are consistent with, in this case, public health policy. So,
I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I'm just going to end the conversation by saying this because I'm not here to argue with you. I just see it differently. We have a police department that's open. We have a fire department that the guys are in contact there. We have public works that's open.
those buildings aren't open to the public.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's a lot of employees in there.
There's
Is the point.
There's
So,
employees
and
in town hall. I mean, we have been open for business since March. I want that to be clear. We've been open for business since March. It's by appointment. If someone needs to come in the building, they come into the building. But where we're able to do the work remotely, that's what we do. And again, that is the guidance from the Department of Health. It's worked well. Our employees are healthy and safe, and we're able to keep up with the workload. I'm not aware where that's been an issue, other than
with me.
it's a perception.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're addressing.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, let me take a second to clarify the comment that I made. I was not, nor would I suggest disbanding or closing municipal court. In fact, those of you that have been around know that I was one of the big advocates for our municipal court, and I would fight to maintain it. And as for residents being sent to Cranston as an inconvenience, Council Lombardi, they're being sent there right now.
I know
as
they
we
are. That's
speak.
what I'm talking about.
Well, I'm just saying, it doesn't have to do with closing our court. Our court is open, but our residents are being sent up there. We need to get to the table. We need to figure this out, and we need to make changes if necessary at the end of the day. Now, the comment I want to make about the clerk's office, Mr. Brown, should this, that's a pretty strong vote that went through the House tonight. Should that be the case, I'm sure that you'll work with the clerk's office to make sure that we're staffed sufficiently to handle this, whether it's a reallocation of resources within the town hall or whether it's during the part of the consolidation, because frankly, our clerk's office does, I don't think any other clerk's office in the state, maybe there is one or two that does as much as ours does. Our clerk's office handles everything. Unlike Newport, unlike Portsmouth, unlike a lot of cities and towns, our clerk's office does everything. They handle probate, they handle municipal court, they handle everything. So I certainly want to see them staffed accordingly. I think we have a hardworking team in there. I mean, look at the hours that they put in this week already, and the rest of this month as we go through 5 council meetings this month. And, they're with us before the meeting and during the meeting and conducting their business during the course of the day. So I'm sure you'll take care of that, Mr. Brown, if you see the need to.
And if I don't, the clerk will certainly point out my shortcomings. So.
I don't think they whine enough,
Oh, they do. No, they really do.
So perhaps they have
They have
to
very strong opinions.
get some flags and whine enough, but they certainly do they certainly have a full plate, what they do. And again, unlike most clerk's office. I don't think a lot of people realize that, but our clerks do everything. Okay, Counselor Santos, any further questions on this? Does anybody have any further questions? of the
Yes, I do.
Counselor Santos.
Years ago, now, Mr. Lombardi is talking about possibly making this part-time clerk that is in your office full-time. Years ago, there was a roving clerk that would cover a vacancy in any office, whether it be the town clerk's, the collector's office, the finance department, tax assessor's office, the Parks and Recreation, which was upstairs, or any other office in the town. She had a full-time job, but it was roving through the building where she was needed. Now, we can make this clerk a full-time roving clerk that she can fulfill a position in any department. Even the other night, Mr. Vice Chairman made mention of the part-time clerk that is in Mr. Cronin's office. She could fill that. There would not have to be another clerk brought in. So that is something to talk about, and why I am talking about, I was that roving clerk that did all the departments in this town. So I know what I'm talking about. So we have to consider possibly, if we don't make her a full-time clerk, because I know she's got a part-time job elsewhere, but if we make her a full-time clerk, possibly to fulfill another position in the town hall when somebody's out on vacation, pregnancy, or whatever the case may be, but make her a full-time clerk.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Anyone else like to make any additional comments? Okay, let's go to the next department. Mr. Brown?
The next department is on page 157. It's the IT department. Total expenditures is $744,000. It's a decrease of $280,000 or 28%. We have 2 FTEs in that department, and those, they're covered by, well, at least one of them is covered by the NERI contract. Capital purchases is we have $45,000 budgeted for network equipment, which also includes computer replacement. That's a constant number that we manage to. There's also $7,000 budgeted for the replacement of a copier. Right now, we're looking at eliminating the use of a summer intern. We have not renewed an OpenGov license for $20,000. Basically, we're going to replace that work with reports that will be generated in-house on the finance department's website. We continue to work towards transitioning our applications to the cloud rather than hosting them internally. We did reclass the $24,000 for technical services to my department for the media consultant. We talked about that at the last meeting. Cybersecurity management is a priority within the department. And also, we talked about at the last meeting, website development, where we're looking at replacing the website with something that's more canned for municipalities and making that transition. There is an adjustment I have to make in the budget adjustments that I'll bring forward or suggest bringing forward to the council. We did reconcile software licenses, and I do need to bring an adjustment forward for $14,000 to pay, not for a new software license, but to reconcile the licenses we have. We're beginning to work on the consolidation of the town and school departments, the issues related to that. And then lastly, again, is COVID. The IT department has really worked 24/7 to not only keep the departments up and running, and address a lot of different cyber issues that have presented themselves with people taking advantage of governments and cybersecurity and things like that. But also supporting remote access, supporting operations like opening up the Emergency Operations Center. It has been a busy 6 months for the IT department, and they've really done an exceptional job making certain that our systems are up and available to users. So Matt should be on the phone to talk a little bit about things in more detail and also to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. So Cybersecurity is a big thing for Middletown, and we do a really good job with it. In fact, I think we do better than a lot of private industry. We have the benefit of me doing some public speaking from one of our vendors that helps us save about $70,000 a year on our cyber security expenditures. Inside that, we do a lot of our security appliance management. We do security awareness training with every person in the town. They are given quizzes. They are giving phishing examples in their email. Sometimes they know, most of the time they do not. Those report back to me and we identify our training needs. We're also getting closer in our policies, namely our written information security plan per Rhode Island General Law 11-49.3-2. And I've been exploring cyber insurance. The ransomware attacks that have been uncontrolled in lots of jurisdictions have been costing towns about $200,000-$300,000 at towns our size. So remote management, obviously that's become a lot bigger. Website we discussed in the last meeting. Social media has really taken on a new face. I think it's been a lot better. I have been working towards a strategic plan, towards some discussions we've had in past meetings, and that has changed with the consolidation. Hasn't stopped, it's just changed. And the consolidation itself, broadband and day-to-day management. So with two of us here, as you've heard me say before, over the last 20 years, technology has been one of the biggest growing industries in the world. And Middletown's no different. It's a busy day. It's more than regular hours every week and weekends. And I got to give Nate a lot of credit. Putting together these meetings, making them more or less a podcast. He deserves a lot of credit for making this happen tonight and every other night we've had with these COVID meetings. So thanks to Nate. And yeah, there's other stuff here, but I can take questions.
Thanks, Nate.
And Nate told us earlier that he handles everything for you.
Yeah, that's it.
I'm just kidding. Councilor Santos,
I'll pass.
Councilor Von Villas,
No.
Councilor Flynn.
Yes, I'm not sure if this is really for Matt or Mr. Brown, but the media consultant and the reclassing the money, I was thinking about this since our last meeting. This is the $57,000 person that is being hired to do content. So I guess as I was thinking about it, that's a pretty big chunk of money. I don't know if that's something typically that, we always talk here in chambers about an RFP and, job description, qualifications. So I'm just wondering, that hasn't happened for this particular project. And I'm wondering if why that is, and if we could maybe take a look at this person's resume and what the job description is, because $57,000 seems like a lot of money, but I'm not exactly sure what they're going to be doing. So I wanted to sort of address that didn't fit in the normal peg and hole scenario that I'm used to.
Okay.
Sean, do you want to take that or do you want me to speak to it?
I think it's more of a statement. I think just from an evolutionary standpoint, we hired the individual to help us get the social media program up and running, basically to organize the communication channels and put a strategy document together, which was completed. Then COVID happened and the messaging sort of took on that life that it has over the past months. Yeah, I have an email today actually that talks about trying to get back to the fundamental program of what is the goal of communication and the strategy, the goals for the upcoming year. So we're basically on the same page. It's something that needs to happen and something that needs to be planned out for the upcoming year. Council President and I talked a little bit about it earlier today. I think there's a couple different things that we can look at, and I think with the questions that I'm answering, that's something that I'll bring forward or back in the next couple of weeks.
So can we get a job description and a resume to see what this $57,000 is going to be buying?
That's what I just said.
Okay, well, a couple of weeks will be after the budget gets voted on. Can we get it before then?
You'll get it as soon as I can. I have a list of questions, including the ones you sent over today. And
Yep.
as soon as I can gather everyone to work on them, you'll have the answers.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Toronto?
Okay, yeah. Matt, thanks for putting this together. The 280K decrease, can you maybe tell me a little bit about what we cut?
We had a fiber optic deployment last year, and that was the big portion of that. That was a deployment between 123 Valley Road, the police department, through the office park, down Wolcott, over by an anchor institution in St. George's that we're hoping to bring on board, and then down to the Paradise Pump Station, and then onto the concession stand and the campground. That was the bulk of that.
Okay, and the fiber optic and bringing that all the way through and so on, that's available to all our residents and to our businesses in the town?
I'm working on that. That's part of my plan. That's a great question. Thank you for that.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, we're working in that direction. I've put a lot of effort into that, and it's part of the overall plan I'm trying to put together.
And, you know, I know COVID's jumped in here and we had to move quickly on technology, broadcasting, the ability to get the message out to the town of what's happening. I know during our department meeting, I had asked for a 6 month to a year to maybe a 3 year to a 5 year plan that, you know, by department, so that we can have a roadmap going forward. Any progress on that, or is that kind of at a standstill right now?
Well, I think I said the last
both.
meeting, both. I mean, the biggest issue is the change in the last month or 6 weeks, which is to combine the town and school departments. So that has certainly changed where we can allocate resources, and it changes how we strategically look at the network overall. But
Well, I would agree, but there's departments that each department has their application, and each department, from what I understand, has their strategy for where they're rolling. I know we're changing the school and bringing it into the IT, so I can see where that would be hard to predict, but there are all the other departments, police, fire, you know, that have systems, and we need to know how old they are, when they're going to be replaced, and what the plan are for each of those departments. We don't have that.
no one disagrees with you, but I think, you know, basically we're looking at how to onboard an entire, you know, a second network. And we don't know what that network looks like. And that is a significant issue that needs to be addressed before we head out in 5 different directions. We have two people, and we're asking a lot, and there's been a lot of change proposed in the last, like I said, 6 weeks. So
Okay, well, I just can say, since I've been on this council, the technology has been nothing but very frustrating, and it's not transparent, so. And we're backdated. It's, you know, we've got to work on this. We really do. And were you involved with the school at all in regards to pricing out the Chromebooks?
Stop stealing my questions.
Is that question for me?
Yes.
No.
They didn't ask you any questions about it?
No, they asked me questions about it, but I did not price out the Chromebooks.
Okay. And I know, Mr. President, I called Sean today to talk to him about the email we received and the executive order to place the PPE on order and Chromebooks. And so I wanted to talk with him about that. He thought it would be a better time to talk about it as a council. So would this be the appropriate time to talk about it?
Well, I would say probably if we're going to talk about it tonight, yes.
Okay. So I did a little research myself. I was very surprised that it went on order, to be honest with you. I thought the last meeting we talked about the PPE being, you know, work, because we had to get the school ready. Because if we didn't get the school ready, we couldn't go back to school. And then there was a lot of conversation around these computers. And there was a lot of questions. You know, Councilman Rodrick was like, maybe we can roll them out, you know, roll 300 out, roll 500 out, roll them out. I asked if there was any special pricing, any discounting going on. I was told that we had all the information as well, which we didn't really have the information of the total cost of this at that meeting. But there was a statement saying we did, which we didn't. So the first time I saw the total cost of this clearly was when I saw the executive order and it was actually ordered, or it was being ordered. So I got to say, I was a little shocked at that. And I understand, and I'd just like to understand why we rushed to it, or why did we jump on it so quickly?
Councilor Toronto, you and I had a conversation earlier today, in all fairness to everybody. And I told you my perception of it. I think Mr. Brown did the right thing by moving ahead. And I think he did the right thing by moving ahead for several reasons. First of all, I don't want to be the showstopper to open our schools. Now, could our schools have opened with our old computers from the mixed messages, and I will emphasize that word, mixed messages that we get from the school administration? I don't know if we could or couldn't have. I still don't know that, whether we could have. I think we owe it to our parents. I think we owe it to our teachers. And I certainly think we owe it to our students to put it in their hand and not be the showstopper. If our school administration was a little more articulate and done a little bit more logistics up front, I think it wouldn't have come down to the 11th hour. I almost feel like by design, this council got put in an 11th hour situation. I totally understand where you're coming from in regards to purchasing, leasing the Chromes. However, when I asked that question the other night, I clearly remember when I said to the superintendent, did you look into leasing when we gave you that recently, when we gave you that, the $60,000? And the answer was, well, we thought it passed our mind. Well, instead of getting 300, we probably could have got 600. You know that, and I know that, if we had leased them. But clearly, that's part of why we are moving to consolidate efforts. And but I think we owe it to our students, again, to our parents and to our teachers, that we moved on these Chromes. And it's not the showstopper, and it's not the finger pointing showstopper that it could be. So that's my position on it.
Okay, and I appreciate that. I was pretty surprised it would move so fast. I was expecting the PPE to move pretty quickly, but we're putting this in place in case the schools don't open up. That's why we're buying the books. We're not buying the books. If we knew the schools were going to open up, we wouldn't be approving this, but this purchase. Maybe some of it.
I concur with you with that.
Right? And the answer during the meeting was, well, if we open up, then all the kids will get the Chromebooks. We'll still use them, which is what's been trying to be done for the last 3 years since I've been on the council, trying to get books into all the kids' hands. And I agree. But we're in a position where this is really a pretty big purchase. We're talking over about 1,400 Chromebooks. I just did a general search online, and I saw a Chromebook similar, same part number. Can't say it's identical because I just looked at it today, and I haven't really seen the details on what we're ordering. I got a less of a price, if not the same, for one. So I'd like to know who negotiated this contract and what type of discount did we get for buying 1,300 of these things?
I couldn't answer that. Mr. Brown, I don't know if you have any information in regards to that, or is this something that got passed to you from the school administration?
So this is from the school administration. So the work was done by their IT director. I did speak to him today. He is, the discussion we had was about going back and refining prices again. We discussed getting lower prices and how that, in light of the order, could be accomplished as far as the paperwork on my end. And I told him, yes, if you can get a lower price, you need to do that. But I also stressed that I did not want to hear that the Chromebooks weren't available for distribution, to the students in September. That the goal of this was, as an emergency, is that in the event that Chromebooks were necessary to distribute for students the first day of school, that they were available. So yes, there was a discussion about shopping for better prices on the Chromebooks, shopping for a better price on the lease, but also the stipulation that the computers are available for students, teachers, day one, and that in this environment may, it could be a challenge, but it's a challenge that's the school departments to follow through with.
The other piece that was with that was, I asked this the other day, is we did distant learning for 3 to 4 months. We educated all our children with distant learning with what we already have. Now, I heard that some of them aren't fast and some of them were, we're having problems with so on, but then are we looking at replacing the ones that aren't working, or are we looking to replace all of them?
If I recall, the
All of them.
superintendent's remark was,
So perfectly
wanted
good
everybody
working
to be
computers that
equal.
we've used.
Everybody to be equal.
Perfectly good
One at a
computers.
time, please.
So perfectly good computers that we use to educate our kids over the last 3 to 4 months are going to just be discarded so we can get new Chromebooks.
I don't think that's an accurate statement. I think you have to look, one of the things I looked at is with the information the school committee provided is the laptops that we're replacing are the used laptops that were purchased 6 years ago. So I don't think it's a scenario where these are laptops that are 2 years old. They had already aged before the school system bought them, whatever it's been, 5 or 6 years ago. So this is, again, when I looked at it, it's a lot of stuff that should have been systematically replaced over the past years. The incremental replacement that I think the council seeks, and a program that replaces it as they go along. I think we all would have expected a request for, or a program where you see a couple hundred laptops, by grade. We're going to replace laptops this year for the first and second grade, and then you do another grade or a school or whatever makes sense within that environment. That's not what happened, and that's the problem. It's, you sort of have a perfect storm where you have a program that didn't provide for the capital replacement. The basis for the program, which we're all familiar with, was based on buying used equipment to start with. And then you add on this complication that everybody might not go back to school, or some people might not go back to school. And then, the last is that everything's fine and we're going to be in the school and only use them when there's a snow day. So I think probably more than anyone emotionally, I'm connected to this because of how this sort of started. But the problem that presents itself today is the school committee, has to adopt one of these plans, and we need to be prepared to implement that plan. And that's how the decision gets made, is to support that effort. And again, to go back to the council president, it's what he said is, I think there's a couple things going on. I pointed out in my email this afternoon, just to sort of demonstrate the thought process. The school department had originally asked for approximately $1 million for technology, $500,000 in Chromebooks, $350,000 for network upgrades, and $150,000 for workstations. On the executive order, we took no action on the network because I think there, in talking to Matt and I talked about this in great detail, there needs to be a capacity analysis there. Whether I do it or the school department does it, but someone has to do it to understand how the network should be constructed. The second item, which we didn't take place on, is the workstations. The school department, the school committee have identified that the workstations need to be replaced so they can support applications related to Project Lead the Way. I'm not in a position right now, and I don't, I think we have a window of time to evaluate whether or not those workstations are going to support that activity or not. But again, I didn't act on that on an emergency basis. I really just tried to focus in on if the kids don't go back to school, how are teachers going to teach? How are teachers going to administer a virtual classroom? And this seemed to be the right decision for the community.
So the decision was made to be prepared to not open the schools.
Mr. Town Council President, I'm here and I can answer some of this information if you allow me to.
I don't want to get off on a long tangent with this tonight.
No, but can I just finish my statement?
Go ahead.
I mean, based on what Sean just said, and based on this purchase order or the quote, and this was actually quoted on June 29th was when we got this, and then it was modified on June 29th again. So this quote's been out there for a couple of weeks, and I saw it yesterday for the first time. But this acquisition of these Chromebooks is based on not opening up the schools. Is that fair to say?
No, because then I'll go back to what you said before. The school committee has been pursuing a one-to-one computer relationship for years now. So, I mean, from a policy standpoint, this is I think at some point, and I'm cutting everybody off, but the school department 6 years ago made a decision, the school committee, not the department, the school committee made a decision to move towards a relationship between students and computers on a one-to-one basis. That decision from a policy standpoint by the school committee had already been made. So I think this is a continuation of that. It's just, again, we're sort of in this purchase. You don't have the space to have a broader discussion about it because the superintendent, the school committee now have a responsibility. They have to submit 3 plans tomorrow to open the schools halfway, or not open the schools. There's basically those 3 scenarios that the regulatory agency, RIDE, is requiring us to address. I think COVID and all of that, again, it consolidates the space in which you can discuss and make a decision, and it makes it hard, and it makes it emotional. But the decision to have 1 computer to 1 student, school committee made that decision 6 years ago, and a lot of people in this room were here for it and not happy about it then because of how it was rolled out. But that's where we've been for 6 years. It hasn't changed.
Okay, I want to move on. Madam Superintendent, I'm going to give you a few minutes, but let's try to keep it to a few minutes.
Yes, absolutely. First of all, I want to thank the executive order enabling us to order the technology and the cleaning supplies that we needed. So thank you very much for that. But I just am a little disturbed, I guess, by the conversation that I'm hearing from a number of the members of the town council saying that we're not prepared, we give false information, we withhold information, that is a wrong perception. And I think it's unfair for many of you to sit where you're at making those statements. It lends great mistrust and continued mistrust between the school committee and the town council. Now, we have been transparent. As our town administrator said, we have been moving toward one-to-one for the computers. We never thought our students would take those computers home. And those computers that we had when we ordered those 6 years ago did not have the filter on it because we weren't letting our students take these home. The one-to-one is needed whether we open school or not, because the students need to take these computers home, because we just like on that Friday, the 13th or whatever it was, we had to turn on a dime and go into distance learning. This could happen again when you take a look at the statistics that are going around the state. But I have to say, I'm truly disappointed that you're projecting this image of the school department not being competent, not being transparent, not being whatever. It is absolutely wrong.
Okay, thank you, Madam Superintendent.
Just one thing. I just want to follow up on that. When I said transparent, I was talking about technology as a community as a whole, that it's very difficult to see exactly what's going on in all the departments from an IT standpoint. I mean, I'm frustrated with the town website just by going to it and the things I found on it and what I didn't find on it. So that was the transparency. What I said was basically to all our technology in the schools. And since I got on the committee, on the school committee, excuse me, the town council, and I've been working with the school, I think you guys do a great job. I know there's been some rubs between the town council and the school. I was very surprised to see that this purchase was going through so quickly after we had so many questions on it on Monday night, and we were going to meet again tonight. So I don't think one day would have hurt the delivery time of all these computers if we could have just discussed it one more time. So I was just a little bit taken back because I said, here we go again. So that was my only opinion. And I truly believe we don't need this many Chromebooks when we already educated our kids for 4 months with the technology we already have. And we didn't vet that out. So that's my only opinion.
Good.
What they decide to do is up to Sean, the town administrator, and the superintendent.
Okay, I'd like to get back on track. Let's get back on the IT department. Council Lombardi?
I wasn't going to ask any questions about IT, but I got to clear something up. Sean, when it was determined back in March, I guess, that they were going to have to go to distance learning, we appropriated X amount of dollars, I forget how much it was, so they could go out and buy computers so they could have one computer for every kid. They didn't have it then, am I correct?
That's my understanding, that additional computers were necessary to achieve the one, to make sure that each child had a computer at the home.
So the characterization that we've been home educating, distance learning our kids on the technology and the computers that we already have is not accurate. We had to go out and buy more because they didn't have them. That's what we were told. They needed to go out and buy more computers so that they could have the one computer to one kid. They didn't have it. We appropriated money for that.
I think so I can't answer that question. I know, so without getting into the weeds of this, there was different technology used at different grade levels. And what I want to say is that the Chromebooks, Rosemary can correct me, I want to say that they went to 3rd and 4th graders, somewhere in the elementary schools, where those students were using iPads before. But I think I'd have to defer to the superintendent, and I think it would be better for me to pull something
Mr. Brown,
together.
let's get back on track.
I don't disagree.
I don't want to beat this horse anymore tonight. We have a lot on the table in front of us. Vice President.
So I have several questions. I'm going to go back to our own IT department first. Sean, are we adding a full-time employee in this department?
No.
Okay. So Terry, what was Terry referring to with the $57,000 of an,
So we've budgeted $57,000 in consulting fees to help us contract with someone to provide content and messaging and communication between the town and the public. So, and I'll give you an example, just I know Rosemary's on the call. There's a component of the reopening plan where we need to develop communication to the public about what's going on. Rosemary and I are working jointly on that with the consultant the town has. So that would be an example of something that this agency would work on. But that's what the fee is, $57,000. And I guess, I go back, I keep hearing about the website. I keep hearing about we need things updated. I continue to hear we need to communicate with the public. At some point, I need a resource to do that. And We were able to put, cobble together some funding to do that, at the end of last year. We've been able to use COVID reimbursement basically to carry that person through the past few months. But, without some sort of resource to work on the website, it will be a challenge. And I'm afraid that you'll continue to be disappointed with it. So, but that's the 57. It's not to hire someone. It's to basically use contract services to work with the departments to get messaging out on the website as well as the social media channels.
Okay, thank you.
Matt, you alluded to that you saved the town $70,000 annually doing public speaking. Can you expound on that?
Absolutely. So we leverage cybersecurity software and an appliance by a company called Darktrace. And they do a very AI-oriented management of the traffic on the network. When they asked me to go talk about it, and I don't talk necessarily about the product, but I talk about cybersecurity hygiene and how you need to have levels of defense. And you need to reduce what's called an attack surface. You don't want to have too many internet connections if they're not actually required. So when I have those speaking engagements, it's usually in a forum that they are having cybersecurity people in.
Okay, is this an annual thing that happens, Matt?
It has been more than maybe two times a year.
Okay. So how do we get reimbursed for that?
We already are. I mean, the product goes out at $105,000. We pay $30,000.
Okay. All right. Anyone else have any additional questions for the IT department? Councilor Flynn?
If you don't mind, Mr. President, others who have gotten to talk on the school issue, and I would just like to say a couple of things, if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
First of all, I do think 57,000 is high for someone who's messaging. My opinion, I'd like to see more information on that, as I've requested already. So I agree with Councilor Toronto. When we had the discussion the other night, I thought that the executive order was just going to be for the PPE only things that were needed. And I understand that it went quickly because there could be a time lag in actual delivery. And you're right, Mr. President, we don't want to hold up school for PPE or for Chromebooks. I get that. And if I can say it, the benefit of COVID-19 has been to accelerate us into the 22nd century. It's not wrong. It is the future for our children to be taught and learning with computers. I'm not happy about the increased screen time, but that's another, sideline problem that they have to deal with. So they do need these. I do think that it is a need. Now, Councilor Lombardi, good point. We just spent $330,000 on a bunch when COVID hit, and now we have this other. So where is all this equipment, this inventory? I don't know. But I think the new Chromebooks, if they are the current technology, they are going to help the teachers do their job. And there has been some challenges out there. So just for the teachers to be able to do their job and be efficient and effective, it's a purchase that can be substantiated. What I'm a little unhappy about is the systematic replacement that Mr. Brown mentioned, because when the school committee's new hire IT guy arrived, he came in, made a presentation, got introduced at the school committee meeting, which I happened to attend, and he was all about leases because they sort of absorb some of that systematic replacement that is going to happen often because technology changes every 6 months. So it's old in a year or two, without question. So, I think it's a need. I'm not happy at an outright buy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else in regards to the IT department?
No, I just want to mention that total purchase, $562,000.
Thank you. Vice President, you want anything else in the IT?
Yes.
Okay.
So now I'd like to address the Chromebook issue, and I agree with probably everybody in the room, not speaking for you, but I think it's a need for the kids. I think in it's a good tool for the children to have and for the teachers to be able to teach these kids more effectively, teach our children more effectively. However, I don't understand why we don't have, or why the school doesn't have and this isn't a shot at you, Rosemary, or the school department. I just don't understand that we all know how quick technology goes by the wayside. So I don't understand why we don't have a 5-year capital plan where we phase these things in. And like I mentioned the other night, do we need all 1,700 at once or 1,400 at once? I don't think so. Do I want some type of tablet or laptop or Chromebook in every child's hand? Absolutely. But we have some. So every X amount of years, it's going to be $1 million. And that's not the way it works. And that's not the way it should work. It should work in just like we would do with our own. We have a plan. We want to replace this. We save for it. And we replace it in segments if we can't afford to do the whole thing, or in phases. And I think what was done today is done. Going forward, there needs to be a plan that the town's not dishing out $1 million, or as these things go up, next it'll be the network system, and it'll be another $400,000 or $500,000 for that. Because when you look at this holistically, you're looking for 4%. And then you're looking for this capital, $1 million on top of that. So really, you're looking for $2 million. I mean, that's just not possible. I hope you understand that. Again, all for the teachers, all for the children getting educated. I have one there. I have some skin in the game here, but I do it for, and I believe it's for every child, not just my child. And that's why I think it's important. And whether I have a child or not, I'm sure, or you have a child or not, Dennis, I'm sure, or Bob, you feel the same way. So I think there needs to be planning. What hasn't changed to me is the lack of planning. That hasn't changed, and that needs to change. And that's not a shot at you or anybody. I'm just telling you, it has to change. We're able to get things done on the town side because, and you are to a certain extent too on the school side, because you plan for those things. These things need to be planned for. It can't just be, and whether it's COVID or not, or distance learning or not, the plan was 6 years ago to have a laptop or some form of computer in every child's hand, which I think is a great decision. As far as the trust, I'm a little taken back by your statements. I don't want to go backwards. We need to work together and move forward. What's happened in the past has happened in the past. So let's just move forward. Nobody's accusing you of not being transparent. Nobody's accusing you. That's all stuff we've had rubs with in the past. Let's move forward and work together and leave the personal stuff behind, and let's move forward as a group and work together to make the school system and have our children get a better education and plan that properly. That's all I'm looking for.
Well, thank you for that. Some of the comments perpetuate that divide between us. So I think we need to be careful about some of the comments. All of us want to move forward.
We don't need a lecture, Madam
No,
Superintendent.
I'm not lecturing. We have a great town.
Mr. Brown,
and we need to
support
move
services.
forward.
Support services are on page 164. These are the general expenses related to operating the town hall, the historical properties, the JFK building, and the Joel Peckham School. Total expenditures, $263,000. It's a decrease of $139,000 or 35% from the prior year. There are no employees in this department. There are no capital purchases planned for this department. Challenges, we're anticipating decreased utilities at the JFK school related to the Newport School Department moving out. We still have East Bay Community Action, but the cost of utilities should be less. And then just again, the ongoing discussion about merging town and school, in this case, facility departments. We basically operate our facilities department on a contract basis. And that is something that we would reconsider as we look at the town and school departments being combined. So that's really it.
Sean, could I just ask you either move that mic closer? I don't know if anybody else, but I'm certainly having a hard time.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep, I apologize.
Thank you, Paul.
Council Santos.
Just a comment. It's nice to see the full name of the Peckham Building, Joel Peckham, and not being the Berkeley Peckham. It's
You're
Joel
awesome.
Peckham.
You're awesome.
Thank you.
Council Von Phillips. Council Flynn.
No, nothing.
Council Toronto.
All set, thank you.
Council Lombardi.
I'm all set.
Okay. Vice President.
I have a lot of questions.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. I want to see it. I want to see
That's
your
okay.
expression.
That's okay. Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
I'm good. I'm all set.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Mr. Brown, Town Solicitor?
Town Solicitor, Town Councils, Boards and Commissions on page 169. Total expenditures, $329,000, a decrease of $62,000 or 16%. The $64,000 decrease is related to non-recurring litigation that was settled last year. There is an increase associated with the election costs to the two scheduled elections with the canvassing authority. And our biggest challenge, obviously, there is with COVID, the ability to convene meetings with the different subcommittees, which is something that we're doing better with, but it is a challenge, and we're getting there. So otherwise, the departments are pretty straightforward.
Okay. Counselor Santos.
Pass.
Von Villas. Flynn.
Pass.
Toronto.
All set, thank you.
Lombardi.
All set.
Vice President.
No, I don't have any questions, Bob.
Okay. Yeah, I think it speaks for itself, nor do I. Okay, Mr. Brown.
Next department is Building and Zoning on page 180. Mr. Kane is not on the call tonight. He had an emergency that we had to attend to, so I'll walk you through it. Total expenditures for the department is $368,000. It's a decrease of $9,000 or 2%. There are currently 4 FTEs scheduled in that department, and actually there are 2 vacancies as of today. The zoning official has resigned from his position, so if anyone in the audience is looking for a job as a building official or as the zoning official, please contact the Human Resources Department. That department falls under NERI. There's the details about compensation, health, dental, and pension. There are no capital purchases planned for the department. There are savings in the department associated with hiring a new employee. We had a senior employee in there prior, so the savings are related to the salary scale and the employee progressing through the different steps over the years after they're hired. And just one thing, and I guess I'm not sure if it's reflected, we have been looking at host compliance and whether or not the $21,000 has been beneficial, and whether or not that is something that we would do internally. So right now there's $21,000 that we're looking at, and whether or not we're going to resubscribe to that. The department's been very busy. I think, Mark, if you're on, can you just talk about building permits that we've had so far? If you could.
Certainly. The building department has been very busy. The revenue, as you've seen in the last year's adjustment, had to increase the revenue to cover some expenses. And to date, it's it's just they're keeping busy. It's amazing how many permits that they're processing. I can go to the revenues. It was almost like $100,000 over budget for this current year.
You know, so,
That they have.
you know, basically what we're seeing is people are home, they're stuck at home and they're making investments in their homes and pulling permits to make improvements. So the department has been very busy. And that's it in a nutshell. I can try to answer any questions you have, or I'll bring them back to Jack if I need to, if anyone has something I
Thank you.
can't answer.
Council Santos.
One question. Mr. Brown, you said the zoning employee has resigned.
Yes,
What's the other position that is now open?
the building inspector. That was,
Building inspector.
so you have the building official, Jack, then you had
Yes.
one building inspector, which was formerly Peter Maderis. And then we had the zoning officer, and you have Celeste. So those are the four
So
positions.
it's the building inspector that is vacant at the present time.
Correct.
Thank you.
Council Von Villas. Council Flynn.
Yes, so I was so surprised to see that host compliance didn't meet the expectations when our neighbors are using them, and we were kind of excited about the prospects of getting help with the industry. Is there any reporting that they've submitted that, we could see what they have been able to do, or have they been doing nothing, and that's why we're here?
I just, when meeting with the staff, meeting with Jack and Wendy and Karen, I think the general consensus is it doesn't work well. And it hasn't been as helpful as we had hoped in identifying people who have or haven't registered. So we do have a call with them that's been scheduled to talk about our concerns. We'll see whether or not they have some sort of solution, but I think overall our feeling is that the service doesn't necessarily provide the benefit that we were looking for as a community.
Okay, I look forward to the results of that conversation. Thank you.
Okay. Council Toronto.
Nothing at this time.
Council Lombardi.
Sean, I was very taken back to hear that we had another opening in that department. That hurts. Where are we at regarding the first building official, as far as, I know there were applications and the whole bit, and I mean, is that in the pipeline to be filled?
Cassandra's working with the personnel board, so that is ongoing, the recruitment process.
Troubling to hear that we got another opening up there, given how busy that office is.
Mhm.
All right, thanks.
Vice President.
Thank you, Bob. So Sean, so I know we were out the building official and you said the zoning enforcement officer?
Correct.
Okay. So, we've had some turnover in that department. That building official we just haven't been able to hold somebody there for any substantial amount of time. And please correct me if I'm wrong on that. That's just my memory. It's like every year or two or three, we're replacing that. Is it a pay issue?
I believe it may be, yes.
Because I know at one time we couldn't get somebody to pass the test, wasn't it? So we had to change the standards.
So the state changed the rules or set a certain set of requirements, job requirements, before someone can sit in that position. So what you just said is the first hurdle is you have to find someone who either has a certification or is willing to quickly take the test and be qualified. And we've hired people, given them the opportunity to take the test. And then that becomes the next problem, is that because there's a shortage throughout the state, once I pass the test, everybody in the state is looking for someone to sit essentially in Jack Kane's seat that has that qualification, and they get hired away. So I believe in attracting someone to the position. One of the difficulties that we have is the level of pay for the position.
Yeah, because we have more than just two vacancy problems here. We have given the activity, as you said, I mean, you go to Home Depot during the COVID and it was out of control, how many people were there doing home improvements and pulling permits and now we don't have anybody to check on those and enforce it potentially. Jack can't go out there and do it all, or Celeste for sure. Not only that, but we don't have any succession planning going on here. So you said it. Somebody there was always, I forget who it was before Jack Maloney, and then Jack Maloney took that spot over, and then Jack Kane was there, and when Jack retired, Jack Maloney retired, Jack Kane stepped in that position. Right now, I don't know what we would do. So I'm sure we'd figure it out, but it's nice to have that succession planning. So I think, from what I've heard on the outside, I think it's partially a pay issue. That's why I brought that up. So I think that's maybe something that you need to, if you haven't already built in the budget, maybe you should.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I concur with what the vice president said. We've lost some good people in those positions, whether it's because they don't have the opportunity to move up, or whether they're being sought and solicited by other cities and towns, which I know was the case for at least one of them or two of them in the past. I think I agree. I think we ought to maybe make it more lucrative for somebody that maybe want to leave a position and come to us instead of somebody leaving us and going to somebody else. So I agree with that. Anyone else in regards to the building and zoning? Any additional comments? Okay, thank you. Mr. Brown.
The next department is on page 189. It's the planning department. Total expenditures, $422,000. That's a decrease of $118,000 or 22% since prior year. There are two FTEs in that department. And again, the one employee is covered by a bargaining unit contract. They're a NERI employee. Highlights of the department: we did reduce consulting services for non-specific studies by $50,000. And then there's a number of projects and challenges that we continue to work on. For the West Main Road Coddington RFI, we had a limited developer response. That was put out for solicitation right when COVID became an issue. So that's an ongoing project. Limited funding for Lower Quinnick Avenue, Dunlap Wheeler Park. That's the undergrounding of utility streetscapes and improvements. Ron is essentially working closely with the engineers and National Grid, trying to figure out whether or not that project can be value engineered into something that's affordable. We continue to work with the transfer of the Shoreline Park with the Navy, the cleanup over there. And lastly, Ron and I have been working to address economic development issues with the town related to COVID this week, mostly looking at implementation of consumer confidence, business confidence survey that's we'll be doing monthly in conjunction with the city of Newport and Connect Greater Newport. Ron's been looking at closures of businesses, starting to track that information. And then something that we're working on jointly with Newport, and we'll be working on in the upcoming weeks, is basically identifying steps we can take to prepare the business community or address needs in the business community come this fall, winter, when economic hardship is going to become a bigger factor for the businesses. We're sort of in a good place now, right now with the summer, that businesses have some positive cash flow, but that is going to become a challenge again as soon as the seasons change. So I'm going to turn it over to Ron and let him talk about the planning department and his efforts.
Good evening, everyone. So I think Sean hit most of the highlights. The only thing maybe I would add is in terms of initiatives for this fiscal year is continuing implementation of the town's comprehensive plan. As you know, we've been working hard at getting the zoning items implemented. So that work continues. You'll be seeing some additional efforts coming forward, map amendments, and also some ordinance amendments coming forward over the next few months. Sean mentioned, West Main Coddington, the RFI. That's something we need to figure out what we're going to do with that. We've got, as Sean mentioned, a limited response to the RFI, at least partially due to COVID. I've worked and talked with our consultant who helped us put that out, and he's not confident in the short term that we're going to get any additional interest in terms of ideas for potential redevelopment. So we'll have to talk in-house, I think, about how the town wishes to proceed with that effort. Atlantic Beach District, and then I guess an update on that, the work with National Grid continues to try to further refine the cost estimates for the undergrounding of utilities in that district. As you know, we got an estimate, a preliminary estimate that was higher than we had anticipated. We went back to National Grid. It took a little time to convene a meeting, but we were finally able to talk with them a couple of weeks ago, get some additional input on some of the specifications that they require, which will help us refine what the cost would be. And then that I guess, amended cost estimate would be brought back to the town council, and we would have a discussion again as to how the town wishes to proceed with that. And then I think just one other thing I'll mention is that Rita Lavoie in my office has been working on resiliency issues along with the city of Newport. We're partnering in a program coming up that will be developing a plan for how the towns, Newport and Middletown, address resiliency issues related to climate change. There'll be a public workshop coming up at some point in the early fall, we think. It'll be done remotely using Zoom probably. Try to get some input from the public, town staff, and also town council members and other town officials will be invited to participate in that workshop. And that's an effort that's funded through the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank and the Nature Conservancy. So that you'll be seeing some more on that coming in the next probably couple of weeks. And I think that's all I wanted to mention. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ron. Council Santos,
Pass.
Council Bonvillas, Council Flynn.
I will just comment, another department in Middletown that does amazing amount of work volume with just 2 full-time employees. So thanks for all that you and Rita do, Ron.
You're welcome.
Council Toronto,
All set, thank you.
Council Lombardi.
Yeah, more of a comment. Ron, first of all, thanks for a great job. Always responsive when I've had questions for a lot of things when it comes to planning and economic development that I need information on. I really appreciate all your help over the years. So in the last 4 weeks, in this economic climate where people are reluctant to start new businesses and they're reluctant to develop because of the uncertainty of what's happening today in the business community, I was contacted by 2 potential developers who actually were looked at that RFI, and 2 people who wanted to open up 2 separate small businesses in this town. And they were disillusioned, to say the least. They don't feel that the process here is streamlined, it's not business friendly. They come in front of zoning and planning, and it's continuance after continuance after continuance, and they're reaching into their pockets so that they can come and contribute to the economic development of this town. I had one guy say to me, he said, I started a project in Connecticut. It took me 6 weeks to get it approved. And he's been trying to get something going here for 6 months and can't get it moved. And quite frankly, either we're open for business or we're not. Because you look at the empty storefronts, and people want to come in and they want to repurpose and they want to, and this is the two people that wanted to start small businesses. And he said that the process is onerous. That's the word they used. And you know what? It's not just Middletown. It's the state. 47, 48, 49th on an MSNBC poll about businesses that don't want to come into this state. Small businesses don't want to come here because the process is onerous across the board in general. Now, either we want to, the small business, the backbone of our communities, the backbone of the economy. Most businesses are small businesses. So the suggestion I'm going to make for down the line is that maybe we need to sit down and maybe we need to have a workshop with the planning board, and maybe we need to figure out how to make the system a little bit more user-friendly. I'm not saying lower our standards, because that's what makes Middletown good, makes Middletown great, is that we do hold people to high standards, and we do care about the environment, and we do care about how people develop here. But by the same token, we're driving them away. So we need to fix it because it's broken. The system is broken. Thank you.
Vice President.
So one thing that, Ron, I just say thank you, your department. I agree with my fellow colleagues. You're very responsive. You always know your business and your information. You're on top of it, and you do a great job. So thank you for that. I do want to, one observation I've made though along the way, and you can consider it relevant or not, just consider it and keep it in your mind. As I look at some of these departments, and I know each department has different functions and different players, and there's different just job descriptions. I get it. But when I look at some departments' total budget, and for example, I look at the zoning department, which we just did before this planning department. They have 4 full-time employees and their total budget is $368,000. And then when I look at the planning department, there's 2 full-time employees with $422,000. So, again, maybe that lends to, and there's different things like the West Main Road thing. I get it. And I'm just looking at the total budget. But when I look at the salaries and I look at 4 people that are salaried at $177,000, and then I look at 2 people that are salaried at $157,000, something's wrong. Just saying, just an observation. I look at the town administrator's budget, 2 full-time employees, $347,000. That's total budget. That's not salaries. I look at finances, 6 full-time employees for $477,000. What planning has $422,000. Now, there's different things. There's variables. I get it. Just something to think about. That's all.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Ron. Any councilors have any additional questions? Okay, Mr. Brown. Next.
I have one more.
Okay, go ahead.
So where are we with this West Main Road?
Well, I think that what's going to happen is we'll come forward at some point with what we received in response to the RFI. It was just one response. We were hoping to get several responses to give the council and the town some ideas to kick around as to what might happen on that property. And then at that point, once we had the responses, we were going to do a public workshop. The planning board was going to host a public workshop and go through each of the responses. I probably have to talk with Sean about how we should proceed with that. Maybe we still do the public workshop, even though we only received that one response. See what folks think of that. We do have the conceptual work that was done several years ago, so we could talk about that too during a public workshop, and then bring the ideas forward to the town council. I mean, ultimately, the town council has to decide what is going to happen on that property. We were just hoping to be able to get some more input, some ideas for us to consider.
Okay, I mean, I just, for me, I know I've been on the side of, where's the traffic study, where's this, where's that, and that's not what we're gonna get into tonight. But, I think we need to really proceed with caution here in these times, that's all.
Counselor Toronto, you want to make?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have one quick question for Ron in regards to the businesses in Middletown. They've been hit pretty hard. I know a few businesses that have gone out of business because they can't afford their rents and they can't see, when they're going to open back up. Some of the gyms and different restaurants are closing. Are we reaching out to our businesses and being proactive and calling in there and talking to these businesses and seeing how the town may be able to help these people stay in business?
The effort that we're taking, Sean mentioned, is in cooperation with Newport, the Chamber, and Connect Greater Newport, reaching out to the businesses and soliciting information about how they're doing, what they need to survive, and then using that information. And of course, we're just getting into the surveying at this point, so we don't have a lot of the results yet. But we would use that information to advocate at the state, maybe federal level, to get some funding and other programs into the town or onto the island to help those folks out. So yes, we are on a regional basis making an effort to address small business impacts.
The governor's holding on to, and the lieutenant governor's trying to address this, but I believe she's holding on to $1 billion plus. That was supposed to go.
Yeah, she just announced announced yesterday a program to use some of that money for small businesses, $15,000 grants. She even said it's a drop in the bucket, but she is going to start using some of that money.
Right, because it's a pretty big impact. And again, this is a impact from closing down the state, closing down the United States, and actually pretty much closing down the world. And, they talk about essential businesses and what's essential, what's not essential. And we're kind of, we initially were just supposed to go into shutting down because we were going to overwhelm our medical system. And that was the primary reason for closing down. And then it became another reason to stay closed and another reason to stay closed. I'm encouraging us to open. People need to get back to their daily lives. They need to be able to get the kids educated. I think schools are essential. I think we need to look at our businesses. So please, if anything we can do to help our businesses and help people stay in business, and I would encourage and be happy to help.
Councilor Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Am I allowed two things in one call, in one turn?
Go right ahead.
Thank you. So my first is for Mr. Wolanski. Ron, didn't we have a public workshop for the West Main Coddington for the public in these chambers for input that was very well attended?
Yes, we did. Yep.
Okay. So we do have at least some base. I thought that we had. I was.
Yeah, we did. We did that. Yes, we definitely did that. And then again, we wanted to, I think, go back with whatever ideas came out of the RFI to bounce that off of people as well.
Okay. Second thing is, Councilor Lombardi, I was having a Groundhog Day moment as you were speaking about the businesses, heard the exact same speech a year and a few months ago, I'm pretty sure. Same business from Connecticut.
Different people.
So.
Different.
Well, and so I guess if it is indeed different people, same issues, I would like some specifics. Once again, data points. What exactly, if you could share from them to the council, are they running into? I'd like to know, a few snippets of where their challenges are to go forward with. Because some could be simply state mandates. Nothing we can do about it.
There are rules.
Well, then I'd like, details for next time, if you, please. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Yes. Vice President.
So, Before, Ron, I think before Rita, I can't remember who it was. It was, because I remember back in the day, we hired, I remember when the town hired Charlie Sylvia as a part-time town planner. I think he was the first one.
That's right.
And so.
Yep.
And that evolved to a full-time position. And then I think we had a part-time person with 1.5 employees in there, I believe. And then we brought a full-time person in to write grants. How many grants have we written? And I mean, how are we doing with grants? Because that was what that position was for. That's what it was sold to that council at that time as. Now, it may evolve to something different at this point, but you know, I still
Yeah.
think there's a lot of opportunities with grants out there that we could probably take advantage of.
Absolutely. Any opportunity we get, Rita is sort of the go-to person for assistance with grant writing. And it's a lot of environmental DEM grants for stormwater and such things, recreation, the drive-in project, the fields are grant funded, at least partially grant funded. So yes, anytime grants we get notice of them, we communicate with the administrator and the other departments to see if there are projects that are eligible, you know, depending on the grant program. So that's something we do on a regular basis.
I was just going to add the SAFER grant for the firefighters. Rita helped write most of that, pulling together the demographic data, as well as assembling it in
Yeah.
a format that was appropriate for FEMA to review.
Yeah, I would like to see, Sean, just no rush on it. It's just, I'm just curious, as I sat here and listened and I was thinking about the past and how that department has evolved to where we are today. I'd like to see how many grants we write, how many actually we get.
Okay, any other questions?
Sure.
Okay,
Thank you, Ron.
thanks, Ron.
You're welcome.
Sean, library?
Page 233. Total expenditures, $845,000, a decrease of $105,000 from the prior year, or 11%. There's 11 full-time employees there. Compensation, they're a separate NERI bargaining unit from the town hall group. 2% increase. The dental and health is the same as the town's. There is a $10,000 allocation from the capital improvement program to fund the purchase of books as part of their book collection, adding to that. From the current fiscal year, they did have $100,000 set aside for building assessment work that has not been utilized. So that is something that has not been acted on. Also, there's a decrease in healthcare costs, mostly related to the transition of an employee from a family plan to a single plan. COVID is a challenge at the library, just like with the other departments. Teresa operates the library in accordance with guidance from the Department of Health and the state library department. And Teresa's actually going to have to chime in on the phase out last year book money. I don't know what that challenge is. So with that, I know she's on the phone, and I believe Sally's on the phone to discuss the library budget with you.
Hi, good evening. It's Teresa.
Good evening, Director.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Loud and clear.
Thank you. So we're asking to be level funded. We've moved money around to put it where we know it will do the most good for the residents of Middletown. A lot more so into digital resources, because that's what we're dealing with. And in fact, we made this decision in January, not knowing what we would be dealing with the pandemic, but it has really, what we've done so far the last few years and what we'd like to continue doing, we think is a good use of the money that you entrust us with. I want to say that the $100,000 for the building assessment that was not utilized, that happened because we were right in the middle of writing the specs when we needed to close because of COVID. So It wasn't that it wasn't attended to, it was just that the timing of it all. And I think perhaps that as much as this building needs help, which is not an exaggeration, if that money had been spent, I don't think it would have been something that you could have worked with at this point in time anyway. So I don't feel badly that that money wasn't spent, given these challenges of the pandemic. It was, I think, a good thing to return that to you. As far as the operating budget goes, again, as I say, we're requesting to be level funded. We've put money where we think we can make the most good of it. We hear from our patrons that they appreciate what we're doing. I know you've received emails, and I'm sorry about the most recent one you received. Doing the best we can over here. And what can I tell you? What else can I answer?
Council Santos.
I'll pass.
Council Von Vella. Council Flynn.
No questions. I just want to say what a beacon of light the library, I think, has been through COVID, making it available for people to come and get reading material or other things, and under difficult circumstances. Saw some pictures of the paper bags, Teresa. So you did a great job, and thanks for keeping us posted as well.
Well, you're very welcome. We appreciate your kind words.
Council Toronto.
I'll second what Terry has to say. I think it's been great. I've been reading about you guys in the paper and all the great things you're doing. So thank you.
Oh,
Councilor
you're
Martin.
welcome. Thank you.
No comments. Thank you so much, Teresa.
You're welcome.
Vice President.
I have a couple comments and a question, and it's not a wise question, but is the HVAC working in that building?
Well, it doesn't work well. And right now,
Okay.
I do have it turned off because we were advised to do that. I can tell you that I'm sitting in the meeting room and I brought a thermometer from home in with me, and it's telling me it's 70 degrees in here. So the night's not so bad.
Okay, just this week coming up is going to be extremely, extremely hot in the 90s.
And I understand.
So I would just, I'm not going to tell you how to run your department. You're not to run it, but just based on that email, I was concerned about. And now it's budget time. If there's any issues, now would be the time to address them.
Well, we
but I
did
have a-
submit-
Go
excuse
ahead.
me. We did submit a capital request because last year, the HVAC company that services us told me I had to replace the condenser. So I did submit an estimate for $41,000, which of course would go out to bid. But that wasn't, that request wasn't included in capital, and I understand why. But it's on its last legs, and that's the truth.
Yeah, okay. So I would just say, again, I echo all my fellow councilors' comments. Teresa, I certainly missed the lively budget presentations that Mr. Arndt and yourself carried on with. It looks like you've certainly taken copious notes from Steve Arndt when it comes to when you're under his budget tutelage, because to come in level funded, we certainly appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Director, I just want to take the opportunity again, and you and I talk periodically, to personally thank you for your total commitment to the service that you provide for our library. It's certainly an institution there that's recognized not only in Newport County, but throughout the state. And it's because of the hard work that you put in and the team that you put in place. And now that I know that you're also a great student because you learn how to do the financial budgets, that working with Steve all the years, we're looking forward to it. But excellent job. Kudos to you. We get great emails in regards to you and the activities that you perform and the business, the way the manner that you run our library is just outstanding. So thank you very, very much.
Well, you're welcome. And thank you, Mr. President. It's a team here, and we're very proud and we're humble to be your employees, and that's the truth.
Thank you, ma'am. Senior Center, Mr. Brown.
Excuse me.
You have a question?
I'm gonna recuse myself.
Okay.
I know I'm not voting on anything, but, the word transparent is thrown around a lot, so I want to make sure I'm as transparent in the abundance of caution as I can be. And when you look at the word transparent, you know what that means? That you can see through something.
Thank you for the description, sir.
You're welcome.
Okay, Madam Clerk, please note.
Yep, the senior center is on page 242 of the budget book. Total expenditures is $275,000. It's a decrease of $92,000 or 25% since the prior year. We continue to have 2 full-time equivalent employees in the department. Compensation, again, is associated with the Neary Town Hall contract with an increase of 2%. A lot of the savings are related to mostly non-recurring capital items, which last year consisted of the van and kitchen equipment. There is an operating increase related to van operations, assuming that they may resume at some point in the future. Challenges, COVID's obviously changed the senior center in the sense that it's not open. However, Arlene and Chris have continued to provide important contact with our senior population over the months, as well as working with seniors for their meal needs. And I think that's really it. It's been a challenging period of time, and I almost think for the most part since March, Arlene and Chris are in the kindness business and making sure that we're staying connected with people who may need more attention, especially where they may not have family around that can take care of them. So Arlene's on the phone, Karen?
Is Director Call on the phone?
She is. She just needs to unmute herself.
Not very good with technology.
Be nice.
Hello?
You're right.
Director, welcome.
I knew I was. Mr. President and members of the council, I just want to say that I thank Sean for his introduction and say to you all that every line item.
Director, we're having problems on this end hearing you.
You are. I don't know.
Yes.
Can you hear me at all?
That's good, but that's perfect. Director?
I'm here.
Okay. Let's try it again. Good evening. Director, if you can hear me, you're muting yourself.
You can't unmute her? Oh, you.
Okay. Until she gets back to us, Councilor Santos, any questions of Mr. Brown?
I'll pass. No.
Councilor Flynn?
No.
Councilor Toronto?
No, I just want to thank the folks at the senior center again, that they did a wonderful job during this whole pandemic. So I just wanted to thank them all for their hard efforts and taking care of some of our most valuable citizens. And I want to thank Sean too for assisting in us moving this senior housing forward. So I look forward to working on that going forward. But thanks for everything.
Councilor Lombardi?
Bob, can I come back in?
You're good now.
Okay. can I start? Because I do have some things I'd like to say.
Yes, go right ahead. Start over, please.
First of all, I'd like to thank Sean for his introduction and thank the council tonight for taking a look at all the senior budget. Every line item we've looked at deliberately with care and concern. Sean asked every department head to review each line item with the understanding of the and concern for the unknown finances that the town was going to face in this fiscal year. Our operating expenses have increased by $7,724, but as Sean mentioned, 5,700 of that are related to the van and the vehicle operating expenses, which that's been a godsend during this COVID crisis. I want to point out that there are no capital improvements for the senior center, and I'm hoping that's because of the senior housing that's going to go in there, that we may get some of those dollars to carry over and do our windows and our doors that we had once planned for. Their state grant, $13,200. Representative Ruggiero gives us $2,000. Palmer gives $1,500. It's a total of $16,000.
Arlene, we have a terrible connection with you.
I don't know why.
Yeah. I've been told that you need to speak right into the mic on the computer. Okay. Every time we look down, we lose it.
All right, is that better?
That's a lot better.
Okay, so did you hear about the grants that we get from the state of Rhode Island for $13,002? Representative Ruggiero gives $2,000 and Senator Palmer $1,500. That's $16,700 toward our $274,000 budget.
Great.
Okay. We also contribute from the senior center's from the senior center's activity fund, another $16,750 of our own monies that we raise through fundraising and membership. This goes to pay instructors and pays for all the events that are held at the senior center. Of course, this is accomplished through creativity, through fundraising, and through the efforts from our volunteers. We could not do the senior center without all the hours, free hours of volunteer service that they provide us. I just want to say that during the COVID, Sean mentioned some of the things that we've done, but Chris and I, as of March 16th, when this all started and the senior center closed down, we hit the floor running. We have delivered to date 2,380 meals. That's on the road every single day, 5 days a week for 3 hours a day. It's a pretty grueling service, I want to tell you, jumping in and out of the van or in and out of the car. Also had a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to meet seniors in the community, elders that have never come to the senior center, but need the care and service that we provide. And I've talked to them daily on a daily basis, and they're at the door waiting for us. And it's not isolation that they're feeling right now, that they need this contact. So I don't know how I will address this in the future when the senior center does open. I don't want to leave these people behind. I will figure out a way to include them somehow in the services that we are now providing and hope to provide for them. I got on the phone immediately, Chris and we called 750 members. He took one book, I took the other, just to see how our seniors were doing, what their needs were, what they were very frightened about COVID, I must say. We also, I had masks made immediately. I called volunteers and I had 120 masks made for distribution. People called the senior center for these masks and we delivered them to people that we serve meals to every day. We set up a companion relationship. I went through the membership book and I looked at for on their memberships when they said that they didn't have a relative nearby, that the relative lived out of town. I took all these names down. I asked one individual, a person that has a great personality, a caring person, to please call these individuals on a weekly basis just to see how they were doing, because they did not have contact with family members. I just want to say one of my biggest concerns are the reopening of the senior center. That is a big concern. I must tell you, I know you're fearful and you're concerned about their health, but I talk to them daily. We get telephone calls constantly at the center, especially now. We're in phase 3. They want to know when it's going to happen. I know that the executive order stay at home was because the seniors were the most vulnerable generation. They know this too. They understand it. But they also realize how precious time in life is because they are living the reality right now. I talked to a woman today, actually, and she begged. She said, I said, well, I'm going to speak to the council. She begged. She said, please, she said, I have regressed. My legs aren't working right. I feel so isolated. I'm emotionally upset. She said, please talk to them. We're in phase 3. You should be able to come to the center. We pay taxes too. We should have that service available to us. And if you know me, which you all do, you know I would never jeopardize any of my seniors at any time. So that is what we are concerned about, and we'd like to move forward with opening the senior center.
Okay, thank you, Director.
You're welcome.
Council Santos,
I'll pass.
Mills, Glenn,
No questions.
Council Toronto.
I just want to, again, thank you, Arlene and Chris and all the volunteers and the seniors. I think you guys have done a great job. They are the hardest hit in this virus, most vulnerable. And I saw what you guys were doing over there with the meals, and really impressive. Really, really great job. And thank you.
Council Lombardi.
Nothing other than the fact, my usual at this time of year, Arlene, just a pat on the back. You guys do just such a wonderful job for our seniors, and thank you so much for all the hard work you and Chris put in.
Yeah, I'm gonna end it myself, Arlene, with that. Kudos to you, Chris, your team that you have up there, your volunteers. You're doing an exceptional job, and we're very proud of you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. President.
Council
Comment?
Santos, go ahead.
Arlene, I'd like to thank you, and I'd also like to thank Chris for what he did a few weeks ago, and you know what I'm talking about. Thank you again.
Can you share that with us?
My brother,
Teresa, let me share somewhat. I will not share it all of it because it's personal.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
But Bob, I would like to say this. Chris and I did run into 2 cases when we were out delivering. One lady said we saved her life. She came to the door. She passed out completely. We had to call 911. And what happened, she had surgery early in the morning. She was totally dehydrated, and she would have died. She was in her 90s, so every day we go there, she's so grateful to us. And we're so grateful we were there at the right time in the right place. But also we had an individual in the community where it was pretty horrific. Chris walked into a circumstance that was unbelievable, and he ran to get help immediately to a family member. And unfortunately, the person passed, but that's what we've run into, and it's been a difficult time for us, and we've just had I don't know how to say it. It's just been very, very difficult, and we're so happy that we are out in that community doing what we're doing on a daily basis.
Yeah, we concur with that. We're happy you were out there as well, and I'm sure there's a lot of residents that will be in agreement with that. Thank you, Director.
You're welcome.
Middletown Prevention Coalition, Mr. Brown?
Yes, so the Middletown Prevention Coalition starts on page 250. Karen, is there anyone on? Okay, good. So total budget expenditures right now is $54,000. It's a decrease of $125,000 or 70% since last year. There's currently one employee in that department. And again, the demographics related to, or census data related to compensation and health. Measurable success in reducing substances since 2012, electronic nicotine delivery systems, and the drug-free community. So just on those two things, skipping over them, I know Lori and Jake are on the phone. They'll talk a little bit more about what the committee has accomplished. The issue that we're running into with this program is that the drug-free community grant is sunsetting, and that's provided the majority of funding for this program over the past years. So essentially, the program is coming to an end, and that's why you see the large decrease in spending is essentially the program will come to an end unless we identify additional funding for it. A challenge of the program just over the last year, again, is COVID. And, you know, basically Lori has been part of the team trying to, you know, run programs to reach out to children, students that are at our schools to help keep them connected to, in that case, the school community or within the sort of that wellness community that the SHE and the committee have created. So, you know, both Lori and Jake are on the call to talk a little bit about this and hopefully a discussion about the sustainability of the program over the upcoming year. So with that, I don't know who wants to go for Lori or Jake, but I'll turn it over to them.
Jake's going to start us off, Sean.
So I'll start. So I want to start by saying thank you. I know we're the last department, and it's been a long process over the last couple of days. I wanted to thank everybody for their participation and dedication. I'll try and keep this as brief as possible. One thing I've seen over the last few days, watching all the other presentations, it's incredibly humbling the amount of work and effort that goes into all these presentations, and not only for the counselors that are sitting there processing the information, but to be a part of a group such as this, for this group of department heads. It's an honor to be included amongst this. So I thank you for that opportunity. We acknowledge it's a difficult year, certainly unlike anything we've ever faced. We know that the town is facing some uncertainty from a budgetary standpoint. There's a lot of moving parts that are still yet to be determined between state funding and federal funding. So I know that there are still some unanswered questions as a result, as it relates to what the final budget will look like. We are normally here presenting information about how successful we've been over the last year. It's usually a statistics-driven presentation, and you will see in packets that I believe you all have that talk about some of the highlights of some of our accomplishments from a statistical standpoint. We do continue to show measured success in reducing use and access to substances within the youth of our community. I know from my past experience and conversations with each and every one of you that you appreciate and value the work that we do. There's really no question on our part that we have your support from a spiritual standpoint. We're hoping that we can present enough information that you will also support us from a budgetary standpoint, because frankly, without some help, as Sean mentioned, we will not be able to go forward past January. So one of the key things that I wanted to point out, and you will see in your packet, and this comes from our value, we actually present quite a high value for the money that would be invested in the work that we do. For every dollar spent, it is projected that we save the town $10.21. So in the long run, the expenditures and the cost, not only the human cost, but the financial cost of taking some of the programming away that we offer the students, it will have a more costly effect in the community down the road. We are fortunate that we have programming and resources that touch every single student from 6th grade through 12th grade at least once per year. No other program in town can say that. And we have a tremendous track record of success in reaching students in those ways, from assemblies to social programs to our Lunch and Learn series that we do at the school. We have evolved our programming and our presence in the school environment to be beyond just a prevention footprint. We now really are evolving into more of a wellness organization. And so a lot of the things that we do, we've taken the stance to position ourselves that wellness in and of itself is a prevention technique. And so we're able to broaden the perspective of what we do greatly in the last couple of years, especially. I'm not going to waste your time and go through all of the different events that we do. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but those events are well known within the community. We know that we have, similar to the support that you all feel for us, we have a lot of fans and a lot of support within the community based on the success of those events.
Thank you, Jake.
Addressing the budget specifically, we have taken a very proactive approach over the last couple of months, knowing that it was going to be a challenge. We originally were looking for approximately $165,000 for the year, between reduction in costs, reduction in overhead, and also some creative work with our federal sponsors and reworking some of the grant money. We got an extension through our DFC funding to reproportion that money. Lori can answer more specific questions about that. But we actually have brought down our budgetary need from 165 down to 44,000. I think that's a significant effort on our part to try and come in under a number that would make things possible for us to work with you guys. And there's still more work to be done, but I think that puts us in a position to continue to deliver the programs that we need to without watering down the message or the work that we do, and still be relevant. Part of that is obviously being a little more creative during the time of COVID. We're going to have to do more virtual events and more things with the students that would be less expensive to do. So that sort of worked in our favor as we reworked the programming. We're also continuing to look outside the box for other avenues of funding, but we would need the ongoing support of the council before we would be able to finish that process. And I think the last thing that I'm going to say before I turn the mic over to Lori, if she has anything to add, the last thing I would say is that this is a scary time, and we've heard from a number of sources, including school psychologists in our community, that now is not the time to take supports away, supports similar to and inclusive of the programming that we do, away from the youth of the community. So you have kids that are facing a lot of things that they've never faced before, both in the school with dealing with distance learning. And I know from sitting through the school committee's presentations prior to us, that there are challenges inherent in that. But there are also challenges that kids are facing at home. You have parents that are potentially losing jobs. You have issues with substance abuse from adults in their world. You have loss of connection with their own friends and their peer group. A lot of things putting pressure on our kids. And frankly, the work that we do, I think, is a vital resource for them. And now is not the time to take that away. So in closing, I hope you guys can find a way to increase the allotment for us from the $2,000 that is currently in the budget, so that we can continue to do the work that we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake.
I think Jake pretty much summed it up. I guess I would just like to piggyback the last piece that he said. COVID-19 has really exacerbated mental health and substance use issues. We met virtually with our Islanders Committed group towards the end of the school year, and many of them talked about the social isolation. One of the things that Islanders Committed, some of the programs that we do, and just attendance in the school building in and of itself afford our kids are connections to school and teachers and their peers. Those build assets, those build protection. So I reiterate what Jake said in terms of, I hope that you can find a way that we can continue to do some of the programming that we've done to offer those social emotional learning, mental health, wellness supports that we've done over these last years. And I too am happy to answer any questions that y'all might have.
Thank you, Lori. Council Santos.
I'll pass, thank you.
Council Von Velez. Council Flood.
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. President. So, Sean, an umbrella question on the ordinance that we were presented. All the other departments, they are at the level they were at last year, or increased, their bottom line dollars of the ordinance, where the summary of what you have recommended to be put in the budget for the departments.
Is that a statement or a question?
That's a question. Yeah.
I would need to go through it in detail, but if there are increases, yes.
Okay. So those departments are being funded. Now, the Middletown Prevention Coalition, they're a department. I'm a little surprised by a couple of things. Your statement that this program's coming to an end. In last year, they actually had on the table $27,000, and this council, in order to get the presence down to our middle school, which is where things start, discussed and approved hiring another person to be at that level. And so their line item budget was $50,000, and you presented here $2,000. So I'm a little shocked at the simple, the program's coming to an end, given what their position in this community is. They're not just a program, they're a department. I know they had a 10-year loan, big commitment. I'm not exactly sure their source. And I know they got X amount each year to run this program, help our youth. And, I think that's, in my opinion, a 10-year grant, that is a commitment from an organization to a community so that the community can take something that has taken root and make it sustainable. They have 10 years to plan sustainability of existence. And honestly, it's not a want. This is a need in our community for our kids. I have 13 letters, the whole council does, of people from different organizations that wrote in to support various perspectives, the work that the Middletown Prevention Coalition does, the high school administration, Newport Mental Health, the Education Enrichment Manager at the Tennis Hall of Fame, the various volunteers in the community, the principal of All Saints Academy, teachers' assistants, business people, reverends. So, this department, this program is part of our community. It's just a shock to see $2,000 down from $50,000. And they've got great support and recognition here. They do the Project Purple every year. They do the Family Day events in late summer. The Islanders Committed, which is the youth group, got recognized statewide for their Lunch and Learn. This organization is Middletown. It's a part of our families and part of our lifestyle, to be quite honest with you. And, if, they're asking for $44,000 bare bones, I don't see why, we can't maybe look at $50,000, which is what they had last year. But I'm not going to just come in and not be solution oriented. So there's a lot of places that this could potentially be found. One of them I brought up earlier is at the police department, their gasoline line item, just as an example. So they're proposing an $86,000 budget. Well, I went back to some of the actual expenses, 2016 through 19, and the actual expenditures for gasoline was $63,000, $69,000, $81,000, $60,000, And the amended for 20 is 60,000. The proposed for 21 is 86,000. Even an average with the outlier of the highest of 81,000, the amount would be 66,000. I'm looking for places where there's some obvious gap that can be thrown into the pot for the Middletown Prevention Center. Let's talk civic donations. I know that's coming up, but you got a whole slew from Park and Recs of high contact requests that we don't even know if they're going to be doing what they're doing. So that may be something, that may be a source for the Middletown Prevention Center. We have a contingency fund. I think there's at least 20,000 in there. I think something came across where 40 came out from somewhere, and we used some earlier of the 100,000 that was created last budget. The President's Fund, I don't know what that has in it, but maybe we can pull a few thousand from that one. The library we saw didn't use 100,000 last year. And maybe the CIP, there's that ending balance that we could decide to use as a council. And I think this is a need. This is not a want. I would request the councilors to give some thought to keeping this in our community because Middletown is a quality community and should have this organization.
Thank you. Councilor Toronto.
Thank you. I want to also thank Lori and her team. My wife does sit on the committee and works with these folks, and they are definitely committed to doing the right things and helping our children make the right decisions. So I think, as Terry said, I think this is part of our community. I think we have to find a way to keep it as part of our community. I am an advocate of seeing if it could be funded across the board, including the school. And this is a big piece of what happens at the school. And I've always said that I felt like we need to get more involvement from the school and from the children getting involved in this program. So I will second what Terry has said. I think we got to find a way to help fund this program.
Councilor Lombardi.
Well, a lot of it's already been said. So I sat on the Prevention Coalition before I was a counselor. Having sat on the juvenile hearing board and seeing what you see on the juvenile hearing board and what you see the kids from our schools and how they interact and can make a huge contribution to the Prevention Coalition, as well as the Prevention Coalition making a huge contribution to our schools. And it's a model, the Prevention Coalition is a model in volunteerism. They're all volunteers. Lori and a part-time person who she hasn't had for a while pretty much make it happen from the administrative standpoint. But the coalition, the board, the different sectors are what make it really happen. And groups like Island is Committed, and how they make Project Purple happen, and the community day, the community outing, the value, the return on our investment with our youth. We always talk about return on investment. It comes back tenfold, and it will come back tenfold in years and years to come, because it teaches our kids how to make good decisions, how to do the right thing, how to be responsible, how to be members of the community. There's a lot of things that we benefit from in the long term, not so much in the short term. They become members of the community and part of our community. So I can't emphasize enough that we need to figure out a way to fund this. I worry about taking money from one pot and putting it in another pot. We got to figure out how to do this with the least impact on other areas of the budget, but you also don't want to be able to have to come back next year and say, okay, we took it from here, but we don't have it from here this time. We got to find a place to put it. You create, a structural issue in the budget too. And, that's something that the state's notorious for, structural deficits. I don't want us to see us do that. I think we got to figure out a way. I agree with you, Terry, that we need to figure out a way to come up with some money to help them out. And if it's bare bones this year, and then next year, maybe they get some grants and maybe the federal money gets extended. I know there are some issues here that we got to wait on, for later in the year. But I think we need to figure out a way to help them out. I saw all those emails, and a lot of those people I sat with on the coalition. I know them all, and they're all very committed to our kids and to our community. So, with that said, I hope my colleagues agree with me that we got to figure out a way to help them out.
Vice President.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I agree with all the colleagues that have spoken so far, and even the ones that haven't, probably thinking the same thing. Just my opinion. So, Jake, nice presentation. Lori, what you and your team have sustained over the 10 years is remarkable. As Sean said, that drug-free community grant is sunsetting. I have a couple budget questions, Sean, as far as the dollars go. Jake referenced going from 165,000 to asking for 44,000 from January on. How did he arrive at that? Do you know?
I'm actually going to ask Mark. I'm not fluid on the grant spending, so if Mark can get on and help walk through that, that would be good.
Sean, I can't hear you.
I'm asking for Mark, Karen, to promote Mark to help answer the questions about the fiscal.
I can answer it for you if you would like. The 165 was the cost to pick up what was lost in DFC. So my position and the Gaudet position and operating expenses. That's what was in the budget, our budget request to you, to the council, to the town, before it was cut.
No, Lori, my question was, I believe Jake said, unless I misunderstood him, that the grant money that's left would get you to January. Is that correct?
Yes, what we have in hand that we know for sure will carry us through the end of January. Yes,
So the 44,000 being requested would carry you through the rest of the year.
correct.
So what's that total?
44. It's actually 43 and some change.
No. The total that's going to get you to January, which I'm not seeing, plus the 44.
Hold on.
And I only asked that question because, you look at, I'm gonna have the same request that we, as my fellow colleagues already stated, that we fund this program. Not that we find a way to fund it, we fund it.
Yeah.
But sustainability wise, I'm just want that dollar figure, what it's going to cost potentially next year.
So for one staff position without operating expenses, Paul, is 75.4.
Okay, so what if it was the
That
one?
would, I'm sorry, that's for the 9 months beyond the end of our DFC grant, the 75.4.
So it's a 75 plus the 44.
The 75 plus the 3 months in DFC. So I don't have that figure here. I can get that to Sean and get it back to you. That 75 is what's needed for 9 months.
Okay. So, and that's just for one full-time employee? That's just for you?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I'd like to see that number, and I'd like to see what it would cost for where the department's staffed at now. So we can figure out whether we can keep the program at its current level or not. That's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see a minimum of one full-time employee, but I think the program was working well with 1.5 employees. And I say that we fund it. And we fund it as Councilor Flynn said, she stole one of my lines, but that's okay. It's not nice to have, it's a necessity. And I think I feel that way. And I see when the kids come, one of the things that's left a lasting presentation, the numbers are the numbers, and the numbers have been good for the most part, the metrics. But the things I see is I see young folks coming before us, standing up for something that they believe in, and the island is committed when they do presentations in front of us. And that takes a lot of nerve in front of your peers at that age, a lot of guts to get up there. And to me, that's impressive. So the more people that you get involved, even if it changes one person's life, you cannot put a value on what the coalition brings and what it has done for these young kids. I think of, from a personal standpoint, I think of my son. He just turned 13 on Monday, and he's in that getting to that impressionable, peer pressured age, and I'm worried about that because you don't know what kind of. Hopefully, you've taught your children well enough to make good decisions. At some point, they don't always make good decisions. So, with organizations like yourself, a department like that reaching out to those children and constantly in their ears, hopefully they're listening. You just can't put a value on that, or you can't put a budget number on that value that you bring. Yes, there has to be a budget number. I think we'd all agree on that, but you can't put a value on that. I say we just fund it, and I'm sure there's a way to fund that. Mr. Brown is extremely bright with budgets and numbers, and I'm sure he'll find a way to do that. But we have to look at not just this budget. We have to look at being sustainable, that program being sustainable for years to come, not only for a funding source, value.
Paul, I don't have those budget numbers in front of me because I'm not where I was when we prepared them after the change in the schedule. But just speaking from memory, the 164, that original number, was not a bare bones number, but it was pretty tight. But we're probably somewhere, fairly close to that for a full year. So the difference, I think your original question was the difference between the 44 and the 164. The DFC grant carried us through the end of September. And then we were able to use the DFC extension to cover our costs for October, November, and December. And so that's why the difference, that's where the delta in those two numbers comes from. That doesn't help us in planning for the following year and looking long-term at what the sustainability is, but just in terms of understanding the progression of those numbers and how we got to that point.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that 75 that I gave you, Paul, was beyond the DFC ending in September.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Hey, Lori, Jake, thank you. Let me just make a few comments. I'm going to echo some of my peers' comments, but this is an effective program. This is certainly a program that needs to be part of a sound public policy. Sound public policy for the quality of life that we want to have in the town of Middletown and we want to have for our children. It's family-based. It's certainly community-based, and it's certainly school-based. And I think it certainly has been aimed at avoiding future prevention issues that can be created, harmful things, by not having programs like this. I think it's very difficult to always gauge or estimate what has been prevented by these programs, but I'm certainly a believer in it, and I'm certainly going to support it, and we'll make it happen, and we'll get it funded so it's full time, and I have no doubt about that. So I think with that, I think we're all pretty much in agreement. And Laurie, Jake, thank you very much for tonight, and keep doing what you're doing because you're certainly providing a service that is found, that's making a difference. And not only is it making a difference, it's sound public policy. And this is the policy that we need to have. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your unwavering support, everyone.
Okay, Mr. Brown,
Thank you.
non-department specific.
Non-department specific is on page 258. Total expenditures, $35 million, an increase of $1 million or 3%. In this department, the pension and OPEB for retirees, the inactive employees is fully funded based on the amounts that have been suggested by the actuary to be contributed to those funds. Under transfers out, you have the $1,060,000 request from the school committee for funding, which would be a 4% increase over the funding that they received last year. There's a recommendation to fund civic appropriation for the beach fund from the general fund of the town for a total cost of $93,000. And there's a transfer out of $34,000 from the general fund to the burial fund to pay for its annual operations. And that's an increase of 197%. This isn't an expense that we've typically had to go to the general fund to pay. We did reduce the net contingency amount in the town council net contingency account by $40,000. And again, COVID plays into a number of items on here. And that's really it. I can answer specific questions, and Mark's on here to answer any questions about the pension and OPEB expenses.
Council Santos.
Mr. President, I'm going to recuse myself whenever the civic support comes up and anybody wants to ask any questions.
Okay.
Mr. Lombardi will answer them.
Huge
Madam Clerk,
responsibility.
please note,
I'm sorry.
Council Santos has recused herself. Council Von Villas. Council Flynn.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. President. So we are talking about civic appropriations now. Is that part of this?
It is.
Okay. You know, you were very hard to understand, Sean. You started talking really fast, so I might have missed some things in there. So my apologies. So the applications come in to you and you recommend the just what's on the application typically, or do you just,
I don't do anything.
you don't do, it's filling the
I leave the appropriations to the discretion of the town council. We've carried the balance. Last year's balance amount for the general fund was $124,926. We've carried that same balance forward for the recommended fiscal year 2021. And Mark has a column on the packet that you received, which indicates their request.
Okay, so just to get the process.
Yep. And what we've typically done is we carry the amount forward on the schedule that Mark's done. But ultimately, this is a decision made by the town council.
So, you know, and again, I'm more line item looking because, you know, the Middletown Prevention Coalition needs to be part of this town. So, and as I'm assessing some of these, you know, and I think everybody deserves, you know, what they've requested. You know, it's great to be philanthropic and to do your tithing and whatnot. But when you're looking at, you know, where you have needs, you know, if the town in general had a need, you know, when my household has a need, I cannot give as much as before. And so just some things, you know, as you're looking to find money for the all-important Middletown Prevention Coalition, I look at things like, you know, the Aquidneck Island Planning Commission, for example. You know, they're in here for $18,000. And, you know, in my head, making sure, and they're a long-term commission, their work is important, don't get me wrong. They do great things, you know, but if I had to choose between them and the immediate need of our youth, I would, you know, fund our youth, which is our future first. That's just sort of where I'm looking at some of these line items. And for example, you know, I looked at the tree commission request for $7,500. They've done such a great job down at Valley Park. You know, I'm not taking anything away from them, but I don't understand why, you know, we might prioritize trees over and not give any Meals on Wheels for Middletown seniors. So I'm just not sure who's looking at these really carefully and making some judgment calls when times are tough and money is tight and there is a lot of needs in a lot of different places. I think some more prioritization has to go on. let's see, you've got, for example, you've got 3 line items for education. You've got East Bay Community Action Program, and that's the Beyond the Bell program, great program. The Middletown Educational Collaborative and the Norman Bird Sanctuary. But not all education is the same in these times. Beyond the Bell, a lot of remedial stuff. It's COVID-19 based. They could do it online. The Middletown Educational Collaborative, if you look at the application, it's a lot of field trips. And some events, fun events like Shall We Salsa. I'm not even sure they're going to be doing those events this year. Field trips, I mean, are those on? Are they off? Sometimes it's, the devil's in the details. I think it's worth looking at some of those details. Norman Bird Sanctuary, same thing. That's a hands-on program. Are they doing it? Before we just say, okay, flat fund, flat fund, I think it's worth finding out if they're really doing it this year and what the need is. Let's see.
You're still doing one question at a time, right?
It's all civic appropriation.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Okay.
same category.
Go right ahead.
Haven't deviated from that. And along those lines, when you're looking at it, you might say, okay, there's a few field trips that are more hands-on than others. They've actually given the amounts, which I really appreciated in the application. And maybe that's where you can say, well, logically, they're not going to do that one. So, we'll either give it to somewhere else or, throw it into where we have a need. Some of these applications, they had the one-page application, no supporting evidence whatsoever or documentation. It might be worthy to look at each one, especially that, Meals on Wheels for seniors, and, really see what they need and what we can fund of that need, knowing that we have other things, other places to put it. And the Parks and Recs, applications, again, I'd want to know exactly what are they doing in COVID-19 times. A lot of these are high contact sports. You've got, hockey, football, soccer. Are they going to be active? I don't want to just write the check. I mean, maybe we move the whole 97,000 into the President's Fund, and as they need it and as they get the green light to go ahead and do it, then we go ahead and fund them. It's just a thought. I'm just not so sure about this summary page that we got. Thank you.
Councilor Toronto.
Thank you, Mr. President. Terry goes in, talking about the civic support, and I've kind of always took a look at that and tried to understand, and those organizations do need support. That's why they're reaching out, and that's why they've reached out over the years. But we also have some needs here internally in the town. And one thing, as I've gone through these budgets, I've seen where there's been times where people have actually donated money to the town and to programs. And I didn't know if we, at one point, had somebody who actually chaired that within the community to help go out and try to raise funds for the town, for things like the coalition or for the schools, for the jerseys. I know we've had, some organizations, and I just don't know the health of those organizations and how they help. But when I looked through the budget, there used to be categories where they said, charitable donations, and they're all zero. So I don't know. Did we have somebody who within the town would go out and chair, fundraising through the community to help fund some of these programs
Mr. Brown.
within the town?
As long as I've been here, we have not. So, there's been one occasion, Director Call did a capital drive for the senior center kitchen. When that was there, Mr. Mika at the Toyota dealership. I think that's really the last time I recall a capital drive on the town side. People have left money to the town, and those when they've passed away or made donations, and those have been accounted for in those charitable lines. But as far as an ongoing capital campaign or a development person in the town, I'm not aware of that happening on an ongoing basis.
Because I think there are a number of organizations that I see that do fundraise, but everyone's doing their own fundraising. I don't know if there's a way to collaborate all these folks together to come up with a program to help reach out to the community. We have a lot of people who live in this community, whether it be part-time or full-time, that I think would help if we just got the word out. So
Good point.
Just an idea.
Council Lombardi.
To Dennis's point, you know, there are a lot of groups out there that fundraise. The high school boosters who specifically help support the high school athletics. The hockey boosters, I don't know, that's one of the lines here. And granted, we don't know what's going to happen, but that group, other than this appropriation, which takes care of ice rental, is a self-supporting group by themselves. And that's the high school hockey team. If you look, I just looked at the school budget and there is no line, there is a line there, but there is no money for ice rental because they usually take care of it through this. And I agree with Terry. I don't think you know what's going to happen come hockey season. I've heard that football is going to go to the spring. They're going to shift it so that they can play. That's coming from the Rhode Island Scholastically. They're going to try to make it happen for some of these kids. So as I look at some of this, it's really tough. I mean, to go after some of these things, not knowing, like the Butler basketball group, they're operating now, but they're operating under the governor's, the Department of Health guidelines with pods, and, you know, they're not competing. They're doing, you know, like practices, and it's like more of a camp than anything else. But they are utilizing to the greatest degree the funds that we give them. As today, right now, they're on Tuesday nights, they're out there, and a lot of the kids in that group are underserved kids, you know, single parent families and the like. And, you know, this keeps them busy in the summertime when, you know, they might not be. And again, you know, when they have idle minds and idle hands, things that are not good happen. So whatever we can fund in the Parks and Rec, again, to serve our kids, we should try to do it. And I say try. You know, maybe there are some funds that can be trimmed back a little bit so that we can push it towards the Prevention Coalition. But and the only other thing is, and you know, I sit on the AIPC, and I know there are times when people wonder what they do, because then they're really not out there in the public like the Aquidneck Island Land Trust, who's very out there. We can raise a lot of money, and they do. They have a lot of donors. The AIPC doesn't have that. They are operating right now on a thin budget. They depend on the $18,000 from all three communities so that they can be sustainable. Now, they have some already in the ground shovel things that are going on right now. If you take a ride down the bottom of Island Drive, you'll see the Wivet that's down there. And there's probably going to be a few more projects like that. I don't know if anybody from the AAPC is on, but they're doing some work over on the Hugendorf property, which is stormwater management type stuff. So those are things that those of us that look at, you know, open space and how we manage stormwater runoff. And that's one of the things we've talked about, and Lord knows what a stormwater runoff nightmare that was the other day. If you looked at High Street, I got a video from a person that lived up there. It looked like an infinity pool that was flowing into the valley, and all of that runoff ended up in the Bailey Brook. Only God knows what ended up in the Bailey Brook that day. But these are the kind of things that Island Waters through the IPC is addressing. They're trying to help. They could do a better job working hand in hand with the town on the planning end of it. But I think that's got to be a partnership that maybe we have to solidify down the road. So other than that, you trim back a little bit here and a little bit there, and maybe everybody feels a little bit of the pain, and maybe some of that money goes to the Prevention Coalition. So, you know, but I think just to eliminate a program with the thought that maybe they won't compete or maybe they won't be is probably not the best way to go, because if they do, they're going to really need the funds too. So,
Mr. President?
You mind if the vice president goes?
No, I just wanted to address or respond to I didn't want a
Oh.
misconception to go forward
Another one.
on what I was proposing.
Is it going to be short?
Very.
Okay.
Just Council Lombardi, I'm not proposing not to fund them ever. I'm just saying that I don't think we should write the check at the beginning of the fiscal year, not knowing if that program might be going forward or not. I think that if, like we have this President's Fund, for example, if it could shift there, and then when they apply, then we pay them once we know that they're doing something. That was all.
Hold it back.
I'm sorry?
Hold it back. is what you're
Yeah,
saying.
just
All right,
until we
thank
know
you.
what's going on. I
Thanks for
wanted
the
to clarify.
clarification. Thank you.
Vice President.
So I've said on councils where this became a hot topics at certain times, and, you know, certain councils on certain councils didn't want either one things funded or maybe thought they should be cut back. So they actually went over each one. We've done that exercise in the past where, hey, you know, why are they asking for this? And some are pretty thorough about it and some aren't. But obviously in these times, when I looked at it, I had the similar concerns. You know, are we playing football? Are we playing basketball? Is hockey going to happen? But I agree. I mean, I think you put the money there, whatever that money the council agrees on, and if they don't use it, then you roll it into next year. But it has to be there. It can't be, if you're going to do a transfer, why not just leave it there and transfer it out if they don't use it, or roll it into next year? But some form, whatever the council decides is, as a majority, you know, whatever that number it's there. And then if it's used, great. If it isn't, then just roll it to next year. That's how I think.
Yeah, I concur with that, and that's what we've done before, and it's the best way to do it. It's a clean way to do it. I think financially, on the bookkeeping side, Mr. Brown, it's the easiest way to do it. Just, if the funds get allocated, if they don't get used, then at the end, we'll just move it at one time, one allocation.
Question?
Councilor Flynn.
So if this list as is gets approved, then I just get, you know, the impression that you get your checkbook out, or, you know, the finance department writes all these checks to these people because it got approved. Is that not how it works?
That's not how it would work. So you
No,
pass the
that-
budget
that
ordinance,
is-
and it sounds like we're going to hold the funds and release them upon
By
request and
resolution.
approval.
Well, we need
Oh,
to.
by resolution, okay. And the Meals on Wheels for the seniors, that's the only one that didn't get carried forward from last year. I'm just not sure why.
It wasn't funded last year.
It was requested, but it wasn't approved, Terry.
It was after the fact. I had brought two things forward after the fact that it did get funded, actually.
I'll have to check with Mark so we can
Yeah.
look at that.
Okay, and I will check my notes as well.
Yeah, because according to this, whether it's accurate or not, I'm assuming it is, that it didn't get funded, but
Okay. Colleagues, I think we got through it. The department budgets. We have one more item on the docket for tonight. Item number 2, continued from June 22nd and July 6th, regular meetings, and July 13th, special meeting. Communication of Councilor Toronto to discuss increasing the town exemptions for seniors, veterans, and physically handicapped.
motion to receive said communication.
Second.
A motion second to receive. All in favor?
Aye.
Councilor Toronto.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you said, this has been continued for a month, maybe a little bit over a month. And this kind of continues off the subcommittee that we created to look at senior and veterans exemptions. And so I did some homework and went in and talked with George a little bit about this as well, just to see what programs we have available. There are two programs, there's basically three programs within the town where we can offer some relief to the seniors. One is a criteria for a freeze of tax rates and valuation. And this is one, if you're 65 years of age or older, and you don't have an income from all your sources that exceeds $11,880. Now, if someone doesn't, that's the guideline, $11,880, you can take advantage of this program.
Do you know when that was put into effect, Councilor Toronto?
So long ago.
A long time ago.
Right. So it's on the books, people can take advantage of it, but.
And I
no
know
one
that
takes
personally.
advantage of it. So I've asked George to maybe give us some ideas going forward of how maybe we can improve this program. And then there was another program, defer of your taxes. That's when you're 65 years of age and your household income is not more than $50,000. You can defer your taxes. No one's taking advantage of that either. Okay, so just, we have them on the books. I think we should look at them and see if they're tools that we want to continue to use.
As a point of interest,
Sure.
Council Santos has brought this up several times over the years about people not reaching out and taking advantage of it. And we have even sent communications to people and even made some phone calls, I believe, at one time. Didn't we, Mr. Santos?
Yes, sir.
To people that we felt were eligible and to try to get them to use it. But they're there. They're tax relief for them.
Correct. So they should, take advantage of them. I think I'll work with George a little bit more to make sure they make sense. Some of them, if you're not making less, if you make more than $12,000, you can't even take advantage of the program.
Well, we up that. When you sit down with George, you're going to get some revisions to that because I can remember
Off our website.
we upped that amount when this was first.
Maybe that hasn't been updated since 2012.
Yeah, I mean, even before that, because I'm trying to remember when we put that in. I mean, I remember I submitted it. I sponsored this thing and I testified at the House over it. And, but it's been a number of years. I
have a question.
Go ahead.
Council Toronto. Dennis, so thanks for bringing this up. So I think the key word there, and maybe I'm wrong, is deferred. Some of the things we've looked at in the past was, freezing taxes for people over a certain age with a certain income. And it ends up they didn't want it.
Yeah.
And they didn't want it because when they passed away, their child was going to have to pay those back taxes. So they're deferring it to, and they don't want to do that. I was shocked at the time, but then, once they brought it, I'd say, hey, this is a great program. No, we don't want that. Nobody applied for it because of the deferment. So maybe that's something you can look at with George and maybe come up with a better program, or better type of deferment, or a different type of deferment, or a different type of language or something. I'm not sure, but that was the reason. I'll never forget that.
But I suggest that when you do, make sure that George looks back and sees the revisions that's been made to some of these that he may see, may not have access to, but some that have been made. In fact, the clerk's office can probably help out a lot with that.
But the other piece to the puzzle is the actual senior exemption, where Council Lombardi and Councilwoman Santos, we sat on the committee and we went through it, and we made a few adjustments to the program, but we said we want to go back and look at this. We feel that the dollar amounts that are being offered at this time should be escalated a little bit for the senior. I know the timing of this is not the best, because we're looking at an exemption, and when you give someone an exemption, someone else has to pick up that burden, okay? So I'm a little hesitant here, but this is a group of folks that I believe are affected by this virus, and they are in their homes, and I think they need some type of relief. How much? I'll leave that up to the council. Right now, the document I got from George shows that
and everyone talks about the exemption value. That's what you get off of your tax assessment. I like to look at the total dollars that you actually get off of it, okay? So today, we offer, back in 2011, just to go back, the total value that we gave out was $513,000 in exemptions to seniors. Fast forward to today, we give $853,000 in exemptions. And that's 10 years later, okay? And that's 20, and in 19 it was 838,000. So it went up basically $20,000 from 19 to 20. And we have hundreds and hundreds of people who take advantage of this. A lot of people who don't have any income, they get the exemption because a certain exemption because they're a senior. They don't qualify for the lower brackets or increase in exemption because of the financial level that they're at. So I would like to consider increasing the exemption. But talking with George, he felt it would probably be best to give the exemption to the people who are in the financial hardship piece, not the people who are the seniors who are getting it because they're seniors. They may not need it financially, but they're seniors and they like to take each other. Or maybe we target, because of the conditions we're in, maybe put money towards the people who are in the financial hardships. So I'll just put that out for discussion, you know, and see what people have to say about that. But I would like to,
The most needy.
the most, yeah, people who really.
And I think that's something that should be taken strongly into consideration and highly weighed when evaluating this. The most needy that need it, they need it. We want to keep our residents, especially in their homes, through their golden years. That has always been, every council that I've sat on, it's always been our goal to make sure that we did everything and anything that we could to keep our residents in their golden years in their home.
I agree. So the dollar amount, I would turn to maybe Sean and George to maybe come up with what they feel might be a fair value that we would give, across, I'd say somewhere 10, 15%. But I would defer to Sean and maybe George to maybe come back with a number that they feel would make sense.
Okay. Good point.
Is that
Council
fair?
Lombardi?
I'm in total agreement, obviously, and you know that. The income tested piece of it is what I like. You have the flat exemption that some people take advantage of. I don't know how many take advantage of the flat exemption, but you might have that figure in front of you, Dennis. But certainly the lower end of the income tested piece of it has a lot of merit. And I think we all know a lot of people that can use it, especially now, even more than ever. So yeah, give it to George and Sean, and anything I can do to help you, just pick up the phone on this one because I'm a big believer in this.
I know you are.
Let's do it.
I know you are.
Let's
Thank
get
you.
it done.
Council Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I absolutely agree that there are great needs, especially among that population. I will say, however, that I'm a little concerned with the timing. We did just expand the exemptions just a year ago across the board. And so we have that obligation because it's already set in an ordinance to apply those to all those who qualify for the program. And I'm concerned because somebody has to pay for it. And everybody else is struggling also. The businesses, the residences, people are out of work, businesses are struggling, and somebody has to pay for that, what we just instituted last year. And I know that for those who are in the category that we all want to help, George is very approachable. If there is an issue, he's going to work with them. I know that I've heard this. That's a fact. So I'm just not sure that this is a good time to shift the tax burden to others who are also struggling, because that's essentially what this does.
Good point. I mean, we're not doing nothing tonight. This isn't going to happen within this
Discussion.
immediate period. It's just basically discussion. Good point. Anybody else?
Yes, me.
Council Santos.
Thank you. Just to elaborate what my colleague down the other end has said, and also what Dennis has brought up, you have a tax freeze. Certain age category, if they're in their very later years, do not want it because the taxes are frozen. And when they do pass away, it's, like my colleague said, it's passed down to their children. It may not be 1 year, could be 2, could be 3, could be 4 years. And if you add up all those tax years, it becomes a burden on the children. That's number one. Number two, with the income tax deduction, you've got some tough people out there do not want to release their information. It's nobody's business what I make. That's what they come up with. That's what I've been told. They don't want the public to know. I was told that it's public information once they apply, but I can't verify that. They don't want people who apply for this, don't want the general public to know that they're applying for it. They have pride. They have pride on what they make. And they feel that if they can't make it on what they earn, they're not going to apply for anything else. I could say a comment to Mrs. Flynn. I'm not paying for anybody's taxes, okay? And you know what I'm getting at. I'm not paying for beach stickers. I'm not paying for anybody's taxes, okay? You know what I'm getting at. So there are a lot of things that seniors take pride in themselves, just like I do. And I'm sure Mrs. Von Villas does, and anybody else who's a senior. I don't know if anybody else here does, but there's pride. They don't want the information out, and they don't want it passed on to the kids. And that's how I feel. I don't want my kids paying if I were to get a tax freeze. I don't want my kids to be paying for something that I decided that I didn't want to pay, so I pass it on to them. That's like an inheritance. They're inheriting my tax payments. That's how I feel.
Anyone else want to make a comment? Vice President.
So I just want to remind everyone that if you're, maybe most of you are, maybe you're not, that the tax assessors, he's governed by a different set of rules from the state. And so he has the ability to, if somebody has a hardship and can't afford the taxes that they're currently assessed, he has the ability. I know this because I did it with a resident. I tried to assist a resident probably 10 years ago with, or 8 years ago. And so he has ability to adjust that person's taxes, but they have to go full disclosure on what their income is and what they can afford and what they can't afford. Once they do that, you know, he can adjust their taxes and what he thinks is fair and what they're able to pay. And there's no deferment. And so that's just want to throw that out there. I know, like you said, a lot of times it's pride with people, especially when seniors are making decisions whether, you know, they're going to eat or whether they're going to buy medicine or heating oil or whatever the case is. But I just want to remind folks, he does have that authority to do that based on the rules governed by the state. Yep, they do, and he'll work with them for sure.
Council Von Villas.
When you're talking about disclosure, you're really only talking about talking to George. I mean, actually, it's not like everybody's published, you know, you give them the information and
Right.
then it becomes public information. It's not like that.
Right. You're right, but that's what people think because they don't know what we know, you know?
My point is that we certainly need to be looking at a means test and trying to help those people who cannot afford to pay what the taxes. So I think I think in terms of helping them, I think it's very, very important. But I think if it's necessary to let people know that nobody's going to know.
Yes, they do. You can go on the tax roll, and Mr. Brown can clarify this for me. You can go on the tax roll. And
I think
see-
that's a
Doesn't give your
question.
income.
Yeah, but they're not going to show their income on the tax.
Yeah, I think
No,
that's a
not their
question for the
income, but
solicitor, though.
Okay. It will not show what their income is, but it will show what they're getting in a tax break. And then you can put two and two together.
Ever seeing that? You
Um,
remember ever seeing that, what they're getting in a
if
tax
you-
break? It shows what their taxes, what they're paying for taxes.
No, the tax roll lists the exemptions that are applied to each property.
Oh, they do, okay.
And if you've got a nosy neighbor, they can look it up.
So to what extent does it show that?
It would only show the exemption amount, but
Yeah.
The
I think
exemption
what,
amount?
Right.
but I think what Mrs. Santos is saying is that, so
You put
if it's
two-
$50, then you can look at the ordinance and say, okay, if Sean got $50, then he's earning between $20,000 and $25,000.
Right. There is a way, Barbara. I've been told.
If somebody wants to go to
Yeah.
that extreme.
Yeah.
Yes.
They do it, Barbara, they do it.
Any other points?
Yes, 1 second.
Counselor Trump?
So the category that we're talking, just so, the last time we increased the exemption amount was right after we did the reassessment of everybody's properties. That's usually when we go back and look at what, if we make any adjustments to the amount that they get off their tax assessment. Because if you go and you raise their value of their properties and you don't raise the exemption amount you give them, then you've basically lessened the amount of money you're giving them. So as soon as we started looking into it, it was kind of interesting. Boom, it just popped up. They decided to, increase the total exemption amount. So if you make $0 to $22,770, you'll get $111,000 off your assessed value. Okay, which would end up being about $1,500 off your taxes. You make $22,000 to $26,000, you roughly get about $12,000 off your taxes. And if you make $26,000 to $52,000, you get $861 off. Okay, so and talking with George, this is a finite group of folks. We're not talking about thousands of people. We're talking of maybe less than 75 to 100 people who actually take advantage of this. Okay, and they're needy folks. They need the help. So that's the market I'm trying to target. I know tonight we're not looking to make any decisions on it, but I think this is where we need to focus. I know it's tough right now. I know if we weren't having these budget constraints, we'd probably all be signing up. But I do understand that we have constraints. There's programs that aren't funded, and maybe the timing's not right at this time. But I'd like to hear from Sean and George if there is a possibility of passing some type of break over to these senior citizens.
Mr. President,
Counselor Santos?
Mr. Toronto,
Yeah.
once you get information from the tax assessor regarding how many people fit into a category, since you're always asking Sean to send you some information regarding this, this, and this, I would like you, once you get all your information, to inform this council as to what you have received from the tax assessor. Is that
So-
possible?
It is, and I can let you know, in 2018, there was 1,079.
No, email it to us.
Okay, well, I will. This is from George, but I just because they asked the question, just to let you know. In 2018, there was 1,079 people taking advantage of it. That's when we started really promoting it. And in 2019, there was 1,275 people. So over 20% increase due to us promoting it, making people aware of it, asking them to sign up. And they're forecasting for this year that it would be roughly the same number. But I'll
Now
get you
that-
more details if you're looking by ages, because your exemption is, you get a flat exemption once you turn 65 to 69, and you get a flat exemption when you turn to 70. And then you've got your income brackets. So I could find out what those numbers are, but they're not very large numbers.
Mr. President,
Council Santos.
may I ask Mr. Toronto another question?
You
Those
may.
figures that you just quoted, those are the basic senior exemptions, right? That everybody is getting,
Correct.
all right? And then you gave some other,
No, that was including all of it. And is George on the line? Sean, do you know?
no,
No.
he's gone. Send us whatever you have.
Okay, I will.
broken down, please.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other points?
Nope. Thank you, Dennis.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you,
In
Dennis.
your favorite motion.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
Second.
A motion second to adjourn. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
See you Monday night.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.